Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool.
Okay, you still have that cold, eh?
No, it's not cold anymore. It's swollen.
Oh. I am.
My hay fever has moved to my throat, which is really annoying.
I don't know what I did yesterday exactly, but I had my throat filled with acid, and so now my throat's really sore. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's the first time I've had hay fever impact my throat, and it's really annoying.
Have you tried
Well, I'm taking anti-allergens.
not being a nature allergic dweeb? I don't know. I wonder how you do a study on that. Like, trying to separate, okay, do people have pollen allergies because they're inside, or are they inside because they have pollen allergies? But then also, they seem to develop over time, right? Like, people get them as they get older, which would suggest it might even be due to overexposure, which...
Well, yeah, it's like latex. I'm allergic to latex now, and I didn't used to be. And so I have to buy Gore-Tex gloves now instead of latex.
Yeah, and... but then I've heard that exposure can help with... So it's all sorts of weird...
Well, it can. So, like with cats, if you're around them more, then the allergies go down.
But I had a friend, she had a bunch of horses growing up, and she became allergic to horses.
Yeah. And
she also became allergic to dogs and cats, I think, like because she grew up on a farm.
Yeah, there could be multiple factors. Like, so in the selfish gene, he talked about there's genes in your body which are kind of destroy the survival of the fittest theory.
Oh, yeah. I didn't read The Selfish Gene, but I read one of his much later books where he references... no.
Not The Watchmaker? Okay.
Later than that.
The God?
No, later than that one. It has a big spiral on the cover. It's about divergent
phenotype.
Divergent taxonomy. But he basically, he reiterates the idea that the gene is trying to survive, not you.
His book's The Something Phenotype. That's the name of it.
This was a different one. It was called The Ancestor's Tale. Yeah.
He's written a lot.
Yeah. He also wrote All Forms Most Beautiful, I think was another of his.
Yeah, but yeah.
And The Greatest Show on Earth.
Yeah, the gene's trying to survive, though. But it's basically... So you get to 20, you have kids, then you have a gene that's bad that kills you at 40. And that's not going to be a gene that stops the survival of the fittest theory, because it shows up after most people have procreated.
Yeah, it doesn't care. It's not actually trying to keep you alive. It's trying to keep itself going, basically. Yeah.
So there's certain genes like that can trigger and various things. And who knows, like effects and exposures you get, like exposure to repeated aluminum, maybe exposure to mercury can cause allergies.
It could be anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Book I was reading, there's...
Like even, so how, like, vaccines are supposed to work with the adjuvant added? Like, let's say you sniff a rose and then get bitten by a poisonous... you get really sick after sniffing a rose. Then your body might, like, take the molecules from the rose, like when your immune system was attacking everything, and they might look at that rose thing, so like, oh, this is that sickness that really hurt us. And so they recognize those molecules. And so every time you smell a rose, you're going to get an allergic reaction. And that's what allergic reactions are sometimes. It's going, oi, there's this invader again, let's kill it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. With the adjutants, I think that's to boost your immune system directly before the...
Yeah, but the adjutant... No, the adjutant is to make your immune system aggravated.
Yeah, so that's what that boosts your immune system, because it's like, oh no, we got a problem, let's...
Yeah, so injecting someone with mercury will do that.
Yeah, with a metal, yeah. Mm-hmm. Basically, you could probably use any metal.
You could probably stab someone.
That might be safer in some ways. Like just like an iron blade or something. Yeah.
Iron blade to the gut.
Yeah. Well, maybe not the gut. But like...
There are safe spots to stab someone in the gut.
Well, I'm just thinking like iron, your body could probably break down. But like aluminum and mercury, not so much.
No.
Like you don't want to be using... Well, I don't know if aluminum counts as a heavy metal, but it certainly sticks around.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to... Like, you could use Teflon probably, but like... Do you want... You know what
asbestos as an adjutant.
You know what the cancer rate for people who work at a Teflon factory is?
100%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
The
Teflon's illegal in Canada.
The Teflon companies, they have the worst luck. I feel sorry for them.
So Teflon's illegal in Canada. It's also invented in Canada.
Do you remember... I have troubles eating muffins still, because we had a Teflon muffin tin, and the Teflon would come off and surround the muffin, and the muffins would have this silvery sheen to them.
And it's super bitter.
And probably like
quite poisonous
deadly
too,
poisonous, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's like a psychological allergy.
but it was also like a shard of metal,
Yeah.
so you'd like choke on it. And
Yeah, but that's sort of like a psychological allergy.
Yeah.
If you bite a muffin, you're like, oh, it's going to be that Teflon taste.
yeah, well, it wasn't the taste for me; it was the shards of metal.
For me, it's taste. It tasted so bad.
No, I'd like peel the outside because no way was I eating that stuff like on purpose. It was that was I don't.
Like, that potentially could cause some of the later symptoms in life of consuming Teflon or even
Yeah, well, like
frogs.
when we both have throat cancer in our 60s, we'll be like, yeah, we know what it was. It was those stupid muffins. The muffins they were pretty good, some of them, but oh man. But the problem was that a lot of them had like rhubarb or banana in them, and that means they don't cook properly. So they were like, so I'd peel off the cooked outside, and then you have like a raw muffin dough on the inside.
Yeah.
And it's not like cookie dough.
Yeah.
It's just horrible sludge.
You take blobs of butter and try and mix it in.
Yeah, and oh man, you know it's crazy. I was telling you, I don't remember what it was about exactly. It might have been about hiking, where I've been realizing I think people like going on hikes and like going on boat trips, but also I think people like eating like rice and tarragon and fennel and muffins and like all these.
Well, so taste is actually, like, you know how people say it's acquired taste? It actually is. Like, there's been studies done on taste, and basically humans hate everything. From a baseline, like, the only thing you like, I think, is sugar. That's the only thing that people's like from baseline is like sugar and fat. Everything else we hate and we have to learn to like, and so your taste buds slowly adjusts over time to accepting things if you eat them enough.
The crazy thing is I'm eating like healthier than I have in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I love it. I love all the things I eat. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this is like I'm just eating vegetables and beef basically, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love it. I'm having a great time. It's like, oh yeah, I'm eating some broccoli. I'm eating some beef. I'm eating some.
Yeah, well, your microbiome adjusts too, like, especially when you have sugar taken out.
But I never liked all that other stuff. It's not like I've changed. It's like I always hated all the other stuff. It's just it was to be healthy or to be. But it's like you have to drown it in so many spices to make the horrible, and the spices are horrible as well.
Yeah.
Like I think basically all spices ruin food, besides maybe cinnamon. But all other spices I think make food taste worse. Like even ginger I think makes food taste worse. Ginger tastes good, but no ginger tastes even better.
What about ginger and honey?
I think honey's just straight up better than the ginger. Honestly, like.
Well, yeah, there are things that are straight up better, but sometimes you want a different taste. Like, you don't always want.
I don't think you do. You know what I think it is? I think, okay, so you know how people will, like, first time they're exposed to social media or to YouTube or something like that, they're like, oh, I can contact my friends. This is great. I can contact them from everywhere. This is really cool. I can watch a video. Oh, this is a funny video, and I can, and you know, it's great. Great experience. But then you watch all the good videos. So then you're sitting there and you're remembering, I had this great experience. So you're trying to, you go into this sort of downward spiral of just, I desperately looking for the next video to give me that high, like to try to feel.
If everything's like a drug.
So I think with the food, it's actually, you're looking for different experiences because they're the only thing that, because you've burnt out on being able to withstand those tastes. So you're like, I just need new, because like there's no way people.
I'm going to put you in a box and ship you to the UK, and then you can like eat boiled everything.
But there's no way people actually like most spices. I'm pretty.
Well, it could be the other thing of like spices actually burn your taste buds off, and they destroy them, and so the only flavor you can taste is high spice. So it's actually is a bit of a paradox of if you eat spice food and spicy food, that's all you can start to taste after a certain point. Like everything else actually loses its taste. It's like, I mean, it's different, but it's like how smokers don't have any sense of taste, and so they have to like drink black coffee after a certain while to like get any sort of flavor.
But I think, like I'm not against. Where am I going with this? I'm falling very much into that stereotype of the boring white person can't eat spice, which I first of all, my ancestors conquered your ancestors for your spice, so I think we like it more.
And used it responsibly.
Because if you had wanted it, if you liked it so much, you would have wanted it more, and you would have won. But no, you lost. So, first of all, that's not what's going on. Second, I like certain spicy food, but what I'm saying is like cadmium or whatever it's called, the stuff you stick in falafels and what. Like, there's no way people actually enjoy eating that, right? Like, and there's no way people enjoy like pepper and.
Wait, so you're going back against what you said about the people actually enjoy hiking?
No, I'm sticking with it. I'm saying there's people don't enjoy hiking. People don't enjoy
Yeah.
spices. They're doing it because they want to be hypocrites. They want to pray in public and say, "Look how virtuous I am for eating all this disgusting food that is used to cover up the taste of rotting meat." Like, you know why? You know why like most spices exist? It's because it was in some horrible environment where, well, first of all, the spicy plant was trying to avoid being eaten, but then because it kills all the bacteria, it's one of the few things that lasts, right? And so it's not meant to be eaten. It's meant to, and it's not meant like the best thing you can imagine eating in a way is stuff that goes moldy like instantly, right? Like lobster or except lobsters are gross because they're bugs, but
So
or like what's a berry that turns to, like slough berries turn to mush instantly.
So I don't know if they rot instantly, but sort of this whole idea. So like eating kiwis and those birds that have their really low base call, and dodos, they're probably also really good to eat because they have no natural predators, so they have no defenses. So their meat's also probably really soft and lush.
No, it's more about luxury foods are those that, or not luxury, but
If it rots fat, it basically is not producing anything that stops it from rotting. It doesn't have any antibacterials or anti-molds in it.
yeah, which means that if people like that thing, they like it for its own sake, not for its other properties.
Yeah.
Whereas pepper and most spices, they like because it keeps food good or it disguises bad tastes or it...
Well, there is the medical theory of hair of the dog.
What were you? You cure something with...
Like a little bit of poison makes you stronger.
Right.
Like small doses of stress are good for you. There is some investigation of that. And so some of food that's poisonous is probably good for you.
Yeah, and also, of course, we're adapted to handle it. But
Yeah.
but I don't think... I think it's a deluded to call it in like, oh,
Enjoyable.
I love this. Or and I think even if you don't like it, you're like, oh, I'm eating because I'm so healthy. It's like, no, like, okay, like kale smoothies or something. It's like, no, you don't like that. That's you're on some sort of... Have you noticed that most diets are focused around doing whatever you can to avoid just eating less good food? Like they're all like, oh, I'm gonna do the Splenda or spirulina purge where I drink algae and then I drink prune juice and I only let myself eat vegetables that have a Q at its third letter instead of like, I'm just gonna eat. So there's this really interesting thing that came out. I don't know when, recently I think, where processed foods seem to have the same sort of chemical structures as digested foods, like pre-digested foods, which means they take way less energy to digest. Now, if your "I have eaten enough" signal is based around the idea of I have expended this much energy on this weight of food, that means if you eat like a pound of chips, it's like you're eating a bunch of vomited potatoes into your mouth, right? Which means you're not going to feel full because you already digested all of them.
I feel like you could do some great satirical art of like a mama bird that's also a factory vomiting chips into like a bunch of fat consumer baby chicks' mouths.
Yeah, it could be a great like political art. But I think that could really explain why processed foods make okay.
Well, so there's more to that as well. Like you're saying, you like these things so there's other studies on micro gut biome, and apparently like basically mind controls you.
Yeah.
And so you actually mentally, it makes you happy when you eat certain things.
But I was never happy, like I said. So
yeah, but some people are, I think, because people have different experiences.
Yeah. But like
not everyone's as deranged as you.
Okay, but you see people like, okay, I really like badminton, right?
Yeah.
Some people might prefer tennis, okay? It's like, okay, yeah, people have differences. I get it, right? But it's like, I really like badminton. Oh, yeah, I really like stepping on nails. It's like, no, that's not an option.
So there's an experiment done with mice where they gave them an option. They could only choose one, and it's cocaine or sugar.
Yeah, I think I heard. I don't...
Or no, it's rats. Sorry, they did it with rats, not mice. And they always took the sugar.
Yeah.
And they had experienced both, so they knew what both were like.
Well, I saw this.
How they do the experiment is so they have the mice or the rats, and they have two containers. They're both open. One has cocaine, one has sugar, and the rats do both of them. And then next, they basically teach the rats, that they can press a button and it'll open the containers. And then they teach them that if you press this button, it'll open this container. If you press this button, it'll open this container. And so they can press both of them and get what they want out of it. And then it's, if you press this one, then this one won't open anymore. And so they learn, okay, so I can only choose one. And then they start going for the sugar.
Do you know what the most sold liquid on Earth is?
Pulp?
Oil.
Oil.
You know what the second most sold liquid on Earth is? It's coffee.
Okay.
It's coffee. And I don't know where pop is, but it's probably up there.
Yeah.
Although that's...
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of pops, but
yeah,
if you can
but
get
if you went to like solids, I'm sure sugar's way up there.
Yeah.
But sugar and coffee are drugs. Like they alter your state of mind. And that's fine, it's fine to have a bit of mind alteration. And also, especially sugar is like... Well, okay, the fact that the human body... How to put this? If you eat a pound of gold, nothing's really going to happen. Because we weren't meant to incorporate gold into our digestive system. There might be some alien species... Well, actually, gold you can't. But if, let's say, aluminum. If you eat a pound of aluminum, it won't be good for you, but you're not really going to get a high from it, probably.
No, you're going to get poisoned.
But there could be some alien species that gets high off eating aluminum because it binds with chemicals in its brain and its blood and its body, and it makes it high. But so sugar and coffee were probably meant to interact with at least the chemicals within them to some extent, like caffeine and sugar. But the fact that our entire society has... There was a... what's his name? He's a nutritionist, and he was talking about how for basically the medieval ages, humans... His idea of humans is that we are kind of this blank slate animal that chooses a dominant drug to dictate their being. And for the medieval ages, that was alcohol, because everyone was drinking beer all the time, because it was the cleanest source of liquid.
Yeah.
And now I'm suspicious that it was actually that very alcoholic at all. But let's take what he said at its face value. So we had the society of stagnation, that they were just always drunk. But nobody's driving, and it's not that much, right? But so your mind is altered around this.
Yeah, maniac driving the carriage like that.
So your idea is altered around the idea of feeling strong, brave, calm, free, like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
But quick to anger. That kind of fits the medieval ages. He said, then coffee, it's sort of the Protestant, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to work hard alteration of society. Now we switched out our drug from alcohol to coffee, and so now society is a coffee-based society, where it's all about work hard. You've got to work from 9 to 5. You've got to, like, you're on a clock rather than... I'm not saying you're working more, you're working less. It's more the fact that everything is so regimented. Everything's like clockwork. Everything's go, 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 go. Like, the amount of work a person... Not everyone is farmers anymore, right?
Yeah.
Which means we are working way harder than we need to.
Even then, if you look at the relative amount, like farming is very hard work and it's unpredictable, and it depends on how you do the farming. But one of the things you have to consider is, our farmers, one farmer like feeds thousands of people.
Yeah.
So if you have a farmer who only has to feed himself and pay taxes and like a little bit extra to make money, he's going to have to do a lot less work.
Yes, but we could have 2 farmers feed 500 people, and both of them work half as much, right?
Yeah.
And then now,
Well, part of the factor is the limited amount of lands available. And
well, part of it is that people aren't starving to death anymore on a bad winter, because now we can build up surplus. Yeah. So I'm not saying that we haven't had a benefit from the trade-off, but we have this very... I was thinking about this, right? What did I see?
Well, it's
I saw like I think I saw a horse, but I was thinking it could have been like any animal, right? Mm. Let's say I'm walking home. I've just been on a walk for fun, right?
Yeah.
I'm walking home, and I see a beaver, right? And so I take a big stick and I club it over the head and kill it, and then I sling it over my shoulder, carry the beaver home. And I was thinking about that, right? So let's say it was 10 in the morning. I go out for my walk, see a beaver, whack, sling it over my shoulder, head back, hand it off to my wife. She does whatever magic she does with it, and suddenly we have food for like 2 days. And you wouldn't be feeling that nagging sense of, I got to do more, I got to do this, I got to do that. You'd just be like, I'm done. Yeah. Like, I have done what I need to do. And you don't have refrigeration either. So there's not even the sense of, I need to get more supplies. Like, there's nothing you can do. You've done it. You've done your job. And it is, you sometimes get into the mindset of your imagination, your imaginary thing, right? And so I was just like, that is the most peaceful life ever. And some days you don't see a beaver and you start starving. And it's like, that's still peaceful, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to die. Just peace. Like, it's actually more peaceful, I think, than... Now, if you're trying to feed your children are starving, and you can't find anything, and you're desperately hunting, searching far and low, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you, let yourself not care too much about your children, or... like obviously the security is nice, obviously, right? And we've traded a little bit of stress for a huge amount of security.
Yeah.
But the no stress is nice. And I think the highs and the lows are probably... I think people, this is my theory, people are better at handling sharp spikes in stress and then lows than they are at constant low-grade stress.
That is completely proven.
And so I think stuff like...
Constant stress is quite bad for you.
Noise pollution, air pollution, I think that's a constant stressor. And I don't think that's good for people at all.
No, all stressors are bad for you. And there's so many different factors of stressor. Like, even that's a part of things going back to allergies. So this was something I forgot. But copper is kind of weird. So did you have any teachers or know like any people that had like a copper amulet that's just this massive chunk of copper like on their wrist?
I've known people that, yeah.
And
I've known of people anyways.
It
yeah.
helps with like arthritis or some condition they have. And it's true because a little bit of the copper wears into you. So some people, when they've been doing that for 30 years, suddenly get huge rashes where the copper is, and they get really sick. And it's because they develop an allergy to copper. And because it's the copper helps with one thing, but also stresses you out. And eventually your body goes, nope, no more.
I know a guy that he's like an elf, or like nickel will like burn him, like yeah. Well, it's slower than like a hot iron, but it's not very long. It starts burning him. I think it's nickel. It might be tin, but I think it's nickel. That
and so stress can also trigger those things, like a constant stress. But the other thing on that little, like, humans never stop, like, you're playing RimWorld, and you're going along, or actually any worker management game, and you could actually get to a stable place, and your people will be happy, and you can keep living, and you don't accept any more colonists, and you just, if a disaster happens, then it's going to be bad, but, like, the state you're at is actually good, but no, you have to do more. You have to go a little bit further. You have to take a few more steps.
You know what's been messing with my mind is grew up surrounded by environmentalist types and outdoorsy types, and it was always the world's getting overpopulated. It's this disaster. We're all going to die. That sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of like, money isn't everything. So just having the world overpopulated is bad, even if it's giving us more money, right? It's like money isn't everything, and overpopulation is this disaster. And the third reason, whatever it was, but
Pollution?
no. Now we have mass immigration in the States, Canada, the UK, right? And the same people saying that high populations are bad and that money isn't everything are the ones saying, for the sake of the economy, we need to keep bringing in people, and we need to. It's the same people. It's the people. It's the generations. It's the generation that taught my generation. We need a lower population. We don't need to. We shouldn't be so focused on money. Now they're the ones saying we need money. We need to bring in as many people as we can. And
But I was just thinking on this, the broader sense of this. So there's those two different messages, and there's some cognitive dissonance there. But I had a thought partly where it comes from, because you also have the like environmentalists or different thing. I don't know if I'd call them environmentalists, but more people concerned about climate change. Because they don't actually really seem to care about the environment a lot of time. But you have that, and you have the people who don't like the global cabal, so like the people who don't like the world economic forum, and they fight against them. And I think there's some weird psychological mythos thingy out now in humans where they want to do something grand or fight against something, and because the world is globalized, because we have instant communication everywhere, so we can talk to someone in Japan, and we're no longer as focused on God, and this is an important part because we can go somewhere else with the focus on God. But so people who do focus on God also experience this. But we want to figure out something to do. So we're not as much as a country, so we're not doing it for the country, we're doing it for the world. And people basically want to save the world in some way. You want to be a part of the narrative that saves the world. You want to be a part of the narrative that saves souls. Like if you're Christian,
evangelical
Christian, then you're like, oh, I gotta save souls for God. And so you get up and you do that, and the person who hates the WEF is like, oh, I gotta stop the WEF in every way I can. I gotta save the world from the WEF.
Do you think like racism could solve that problem? Like, if your life is miserable because you're fighting against these impossible powers that you can't influence, right? Like climate change or the WEF. Like, the WEF probably doesn't have that much power really in the grand scheme of things. Well, maybe they do because they have a lot of governmental influence. But even then, overall, governments might not have that much influence compared to the solid mass of people, right? But, or at least you hope that's the case. But so you're kind of fighting at these invincible, ephemeral forces. But
they're invincible or ephemeral.
So you're going to always have this enemy out of your reach that you're just going to rage against uselessly, right? Whereas with racism, you can very easily say, "Hey, get out of my neighborhood, get off my," like, and you can feel good. It's like, I'm glad those guys are over there and I'm over here.
That was the anti-racism movement as well. That was a great thing to fight for. And now that it's gone, people are still looking to fight for it because it's a pretty good fight. And it's a fight you could actually fight, right? Like you said, you're talking about the other way of being racist towards someone, but fighting the racist was a fight that seemed to work.
But the problem is you run out of racists.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to create more.
But as long as you're not purging all the other races, then you always have people you can...
Well, so that's like a... As weird as this would sound, and Orson Scott Card kind of wrote about this, I think an alien invasion would be great for humanity. If we could win.
But you can also... You can do stuff, though, like, instead of being racist, you can be nationalistic, right? You can say, my country's the best, and my life goal is to keep my country the best and to keep my borders secure and keep all those other people out. And that makes you, like, and all those other people, I don't even, it's like, look, your grandfather was an Indian and your grandfather was a Nepalese businessman or something, and you're both in Canada when the nationalism starts. You're now Canadians, and we're keeping everyone out. We're keeping out those Americans. We're keeping out those Brits, because this is Canada for Canadians. Whatever race a Canadian is, they are part of the ethnic group of Canadians, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep out all those darn foreigners. Then suddenly you have these groups, and you don't have to declare war on them. You just have to keep your country and your culture pure, as it were, which is what Quebecois do all the time, right? Like that's their favorite thing.
That's one of their fights, and it works for them.
But I think something like that, nationalism or religion. The devil is a great force to fight against because you can fight against him in your own life every day. You can be like, I resisted the devil today. I'm a winner.
It's literally the search for meaning. It is a certain way of proceeding up the infinite staircase is to battle against a force.
But the great thing about the devil is he obviously exists. Even if you're an atheist, it's like the devil obviously exists because you have Moloch, which is basically a mathematical phenomenon that things tend towards evil and corruption because you would be stupid not to tend towards evil and corruption. And therefore resisting that is something you have to do always, no matter how advanced society becomes. Like, there's this quote that's used and abused by Martin Luther King Jr., which is that the moral arc of history is long, but it curves towards justice. But the thing is, Moloch... So it's like, okay, all the evils of the world will slowly be... racism will vanish and sexism will vanish and all the evils will slowly disappear and we will be in this glorious future. And that's the thing a lot of progressive leftist types are actually aiming towards. They see like, okay, now these transphobes, they're the people that will go away next. And that's why they talk about the right side of history. It's like, because there is actually a very clear moral arc in their minds. But the thing about the moral arc, even if it's true... You don't know in the moment which things were good and bad. And even in the long run, you might change your mind.
Yeah.
Like, slavery was this great idea for thousands of years before people were like, okay, no, this was a bad idea. And that might change again. But this might be a weird blip in history where slavery comes back. It's like, no, slavery made a lot of sense.
Also, slavery for a long time was a moral tool.
But it could still be a moral tool in the future. Like, people might be like, you know what, this is solitary confinement or paying back your community and reintegrating into your community through forced labor. Which is worse? Right? Because solitary confinement, that's horrible torture. Whereas I'm forced to work in the community center and I have to talk to people and therefore I'm not forming gangs in the prison cell. And I actually get to talk with the people that I will be released out into in the next 10 years and get to know them and they get to know me. And we get to not be afraid of each other and I don't fall back into old habits. That might be better. But that is slavery.
And there's a man with a whip behind me. He's got hounds. And he has pure white clothes and a big white hat. And his house has white columns. He's just in charge. Like that's just his style. He's in charge of all the community service people.
Well, slavery doesn't have to be American chattel slavery, right? Because the American slavery was I've talked about this before for some
They
reason.
ruined slavery.
But Americans ruined slavery for the rest of us, right? Like slavery used to be such a good idea, and then the Americans came along and they totally abused it, right? Like they took this beautiful system and they abused it by enslaving the children of the people they enslaved,
Yeah.
and by enacting unbelievably horrible tortures on the people that were their slaves. Like you should have a duty to your slave, right? Like if you are, or your master should have a duty to you, because it's very easy to put yourself in the master's mindset. But you know, there's more slaves than masters. You're more likely to be a slave, right?
Yeah.
But your master should have a duty to you. If you are the warden or a guardian of something, if you are the custodian of the earth, that means you protect the earth. Your master should be protecting you. It's like the king's job is to protect his people.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same idea. But but what happens if you have total power over someone? And I think that's the first problem, is you shouldn't have total power over even your slave. You need God, or you need the government, unfortunately, to be that guiding force that says, no, there's rules what you can do with your slaves, right? If this is in the magical utopian world of slavery. But what happened was you have total control over this person, and so you then start abusing it. You're like, I can do whatever I want with you, and you're nothing. You're not even human. It's like, no, you have to treat them as human. They are human. That's important. Like the Aztecs, for all their faults, they had a great law about slavery, which was that if you ran away and you made it to, I think it was the king, it might have been the temple, but if you made it to, let's say it was the king, if you ran away and you made it to the king before your master's oldest son caught you, then you were free.
Yeah.
And so that means you don't treat, you want your slave to not be the kind of guy that runs away. You want to keep him, like the Romans had a holiday where all the slaves would become the masters and all the masters would become the slaves. Yeah. And it was the celebration of slaves. And the reason the Romans had this holiday was because they didn't want a fourth slave revolt.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the time, Norse thralls got paid wages, like very good wages. And they could choose what to do with them. So you could either buy your own freedom and then have freedom to move about the world, or you could like go to the bar and drink there and continue being a slave for the rest of your life.
I've had this thought about sweatshops where, they're pretty obviously bad in many, many ways. Like the suicide nets in China, of course, that's the famous example. But like Bangladesh used to have these horrible debt slavery things where your parents would get into debt, and then the children would have to pay it off, but the children would have to pay rent to stay in the factory, and the factory hours would be so tight they couldn't stay anywhere else but the factory. And the rent in the factory would cost more than their wages. Yeah. So they would actually go further in debt. And that's ridiculous. That's horrible. But Bangladesh overhauled its laws, and then all the sweatshops actually left Bangladesh because Bangladesh was like, no, you have to pay people more than they owe you. And they're like, oh, well, then we're leaving. And so they moved, and then I think they moved to Pakistan, and then they might have moved again. Like, they move around to wherever it's cheapest, basically. But people talk about, you get your cell phone from a sweatshop, you get your shoes from a sweatshop, and it's this horrible thing. And it is in many ways. Or your blood diamonds, or your cadmium in battery.
Cobalt, rare earth metals.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And it is horrible. But I do wonder, okay, let's say everyone at once says, okay, no more. We're everything is built in our own country, right? Those people that are barely getting by in their debt slavery, what happens to them? And this gets some sort of weird justification of slavery territory, right? It's like, oh, they're better off being slaves than being animals in the wild, right? And so I think, so what happens to those people? Obviously, they all die and starve because they have no money, right? But let's say 10 generations down the line, because that's always the question, right? It's like, it hurts now, but what's the future look like?
So, I see several possible things, but the most likely one is that society that they're in kind of goes through multiple collapses and stagnates to a certain point. The other one is that they have those resources, and so they develop their technology to whatever extent they can. I don't know how well they'll be able to do it, or if they'll be able to sustain their population through food or whatever. It really depends region to region where it is. But I think there'd be a lot of basically collapses in the area because their economy is no longer being propped up in that way. And so it'd just be massive stagnation, and maybe eventually, like if everyone was basically like isolationism now, so every country did isolationism, no trade with each other, we do everything within our own country, I think there'd be mass starvation for a period. Unless you're like, all right, we're going to start doing this, and slowly transfer to it. But then like certain countries wouldn't be able to produce stuff anymore because they simply do not have those resources or the technologies to make them. But in the sweatshop areas specifically, so immediately I think they would have wide-scale collapse.
But that's why I talked about 10
Yeah,
generations.
and then in 10 generations, they might just be medieval. Or like a weird mix of medieval and modern.
But my question kind of comes like...
And socially, I think they might still have slaves to a different extent, perhaps. Like there would still be people treated badly and like just controlled, and there'd be even less moral judgment of, oh, but at least I'm paying him in the sweatshops. Like, no, because I don't have to deal with the Western value of this place. He's just a slave now, or he's just a serf.
Like, I don't think they would be medieval. I think they would be... I don't think your technology would really go backwards as long as you remain in contact with the rest of the world to some extent, right? Like, you knew what you had and that sort of thing. But I guess a different way to look at it is going backwards to the moment, the inflection point when sweatshops were being introduced. You said don't introduce them, right? The question becomes then, why did people ever agree to work in the sweatshop in the first place? And you say, well, because they were forced to, obviously, at the gunpoint or something, I guess. But...
It might have been better than not living at all.
Yeah, at the time. Now, of course...
I'm not even saying, like, with a gunpoint. Like, I can starve or I can work in the sweatshop.
Yeah, but at the time, like I said, like, your grandparents shouldn't be making that decision for you.
Yeah.
So they might have thought that was worth it for that day, but then they get trapped in it for 10 years and they go, wait, I shouldn't have ever done this, and now my grandchildren will be still in this horrible situation.
Well, they might have never had grandchildren. They might just be dead.
Yes, but you could also say that those that survived would be happier than... It's kind of the same thing with the agricultural revolution. You multiply your population by 10, right? You have 10 times as many people. But all those people are less healthy than the ones that used to the ones that used to survive, right? Mm. So you used to have most people died, but those that lived were healthy. And it might be that having a society full of healthy people is better for those that remain than having a bunch of sick people all being miserable together.
When do you... I don't want to lose the conversation right now, but when do you think the healthiest period for humans was?
For surviving humans or on average? Because I think that before the agricultural revolution was probably the healthiest period for those that were alive. But that would be like the people over the age of 20 that are still alive, right?
Yeah. Because there's like so much death from childbirth and all those things. So
well,
I'd say survival plus alive. So adding those together.
I wonder about if childbirth is so deadly, right?
Well, childbirth and childhood, like to the age of 5, then you're just... Bleh.
Right, but if childbirth is so deadly and there's such a high infant mortality, then how are there any people? That's my question. I'm suspicious about the idea that... Now, what I could believe is you say, okay, 50% of women died in childbirth, or 100% of women died in childbirth. That does not mean 50% of births are fatal.
Yeah.
That means women keep having birth until it kills them, which means they might have 20 children, right? And just year after year after year until it kills them. And
like a 50%, a 20% chance you die from giving birth.
But it's not. It's like a 5% or less, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just that you keep having birth over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the women that survive are the ones that become infertile, basically.
Yeah.
But that also seems strange to me, slightly, because surely the evolutionary pressures would be towards, not having less children.
Well, I don't think childbirth was like the main deadly thing, and it was more deadly for the children. Like babies died a lot, and I was more talking about like just age 0 to 5. It's super deadly for people.
Right. So with your idea, what's the healthiest time? Are you talking about you're including in all the infant mortality and all the childbirth?
Yeah, so including that in, but also like people being overweight suffering from that as well.
Right. So let's compare a made-up hunter-gatherer society where you have one person dies and one person grows up healthy and strong and perfect. So that's like a 50% score, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a society where 3 people live and they're all overweight and sick and they die in their 60s instead of these hunter-gatherers who die in their 80s for whatever reason. Here's a question. Let's say the hunter-gatherer dies when he's 60, fighting a tiger at the peak of his physical form, versus the agricultural victim who lives to 90 with arthritis for 40 years.
Yeah.
You say which one was healthier, which one had a healthier, better life. Like, what would you be your take there?
Well, that's probably the subjection I'm asking you.
Yeah, like 60 perfect years, or like, 90 years, but of those 70 were kind of rough. Like you started, your bones started aching once you turned 30, and they never really stopped.
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
And that becomes subjective, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I think I would you... So the question kind of becomes, what life... Okay, right now, someone comes up to you. It's Evil Corp. Hey, how's it going? Here from Evil Corp. So we got this new machine, right? You go in there, it makes you perfectly healthy for the rest of your life. 50% chance it just disintegrates you, though. You step in the machine.
Sheesh.
Oh, it's a hard choice. Okay, 25% chance it disintegrates you. Perfect health, perfect strength. Every breath you take in, you feel strong, you feel free.
Honestly, I think I'd take the 25. The 50, I think, is a little too big of a gamble, but I would take the 1 in 4.
All right, what about a 26%? I think there's only about 5 actual chances that humans work with, right?
Yeah.
You got your 50-50, you got your 100%, you got your 0%, and then you got your 95 and your 5%.
Yeah.
Like,
I think 25 and 75 are...
maybe, yeah, and 30-60, something like that, yeah. Yeah, so maybe there's like 7, but yeah. I don't know. Is there a difference between a 95% chance and a 25% and a 75% chance? Like, it should happen all the time, but sometimes it doesn't?
I think there's quite a big difference. I think 95% chance is... like, if you're playing XCOM, the 75% chance will hit more than the 95% chance. Because you notice the 95% missing.
Yeah. Well, I think... Well, XCOM is tricky as well, because if we're talking the original XCOM, it's actually calculating the ballistics.
Yeah.
And so it's creating a cone, and what the percentage is, it's actually saying that there is an end circle to that cone, and it's the chance it will stay within that circle. So you can actually miss a 215% chance shot.
Alright, so if you're playing Warhammer, you know what the statistics could be of rolling the dice, that sort of thing.
Or if you're playing the new XCOM,
Yeah.
that's also the case.
Yeah, I'm talking about the new XCOM.
I believe the new XCOM people actually do fake the numbers. I think the numbers they display on the screen for your chances of hitting are actually significantly lower than your actual chances of hitting.
Probably.
But what I mean is, like, if you have a 90% chance to hit, they'll tell you have a 75% chance to hit. So it's in your favor.
Yeah.
But people still say it's out of
I
their
wouldn't
favor.
doubt that. But yeah, with the Evil Corp, I think, like, let's go to different. I think even like a 1 in 3rd disintegration, I won't take. I think it needs to be like 1 in 4 or lower for me.
And okay, here's let's throw in some other variables, right?
Like, part of the problem even with that, with thinking about the question, is alright. So it's this weird mindset of, I could just take this, I can be healthy forever. But that's basically saying, come live in Lorien forever. Or I could strive to make myself healthy. And I'm losing that journey by going into the Evil Corp machine.
You could say the same about, I've never been to Guantanamo and tortured, and therefore I'm losing that journey of recovering from that torture, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't actually think being unhealthy is a natural state of affairs. Like it, obviously setbacks happen, injury happens, right? But being arthritic or being constantly tired or
Getting hay fever once a year, every year for the rest of your life for like 2 weeks.
Or not having the proper ability to formulate being. There's you spend enough time online, right? And you see, like, reading comments and whatnot, and you see, I don't know, like 30% of the comments or so are from people who don't understand. So I was watching, there's this ad, Folger's ad. It's a coffee. Folger's is a coffee. And it's about this guy comes home from, it's not war, it's from being a Peace Corps. So that's, that's kind of war, but it's like you prevent wars as Peace Corps. He's serving in Western region of Africa. Or West Africa, I guess, is debatably a country. I think them and Morocco sort of are in disagreement about that. But I think that's what it's called. But anyways, he comes home and he sees his sister and he's so happy to see her, hasn't seen her since she was a little girl. And they're making coffee together and he brings her back some thing from Africa, right? He's
Yeah.
like, here's my present for you, and she opens it, and it has this big bow on it, and she sticks the bow on him, and she says, "You're my present," and then the parents come down, and they're all happy, and the comments on this ad, just everyone talking about how it's clearly an incestuous relationship, and how they're like real siblings would be fighting each other and punching each other and calling each other idiots, and now those are things siblings can do. I think we are much more the second kind of sibling than the first kind in many ways, but that doesn't mean siblings can't be like I know some.
I think it's also actually like the age difference between siblings. Like if she was a little girl and he went off to war, then they're probably like 10 years apart.
The actors were 11 years apart.
Yeah. So 11 years apart, even then that's a great case. So 11 years apart and brother and sister, literally he is this awesome guy to her.
I think part of the problem with the ad is the actress was 19 for it, and the other guy was 30, right?
Yeah.
But he looked really young for his age.
Yeah.
Like he looked like he was like 23, and she looks like she's like 23. So they look almost the same age.
Yeah, but like with that age difference apart, like it's literally different how siblings treat each other. Like they wouldn't be fighting because he's 10 years older than her. Like he might tease her, like pick her up over his head and like hang her by her feet. But like that would be like she'd be giggling with that and having fun.
But like I know some siblings that very cuddly and close, and if you suggested to them that they were incestuous with that, right? Like they would never let you talk to them or their child ever again.
Yeah. So here's the thing about the evil core commission. I get what you're saying with that health thing.
But what I'm talking about with the internet thing is it's the mental aspect, right? Where there's so many people who their minds are twisted, where they don't see human relationships as anything other than you gain or you lose. Mm-hmm. It has to be about sex or money. Like it's this materialist. Like okay, there's a if you go into the machine, there's a 10% chance at the evil core machine. There's a 10% chance it vaporizes you, but otherwise you're not a communist. Like there's all these mental illnesses too. I guess is what I'm getting at, and all these negative modes of thought. Like okay, cluster B, cluster A, cluster C, like all those like personality disorders, right? You cure all of those as well with this machine. Yeah. Like you start adding those in, you got your 25% chance to not have OCD or narcissism. Or,
well, those might actually be physical health as well.
Yeah, ADHD. Well, there's things like autism, ADHD. Like those things seem to be more genetic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other genetic mental Down syndrome, Thompson syndrome, like all those sort of. I think it's called Thompson, the one that makes you fat and tall and like. But don't worry, you don't have it because it also makes you very susceptible to what other people tell you. Like actually,
that is a gaslighting statement if you've ever heard one.
but it actually like makes you really agreeable. It like apparently. I was reading about these chromosomal disorders the other day.
So this thing gives you health. So it will get rid of genetic problems.
Yeah.
We're going to. So I've actually changed my answer. I'm still uncertain about the 50, but I was considering more. I think I would do the like 30% chance of disintegration. I think I'd actually take that. But here's the problem with this machine, right? Orson Scott Card helped make it. Yeah. So you go in there, and if you don't get disintegrated, you come out as a Neanderthal.
Right. No, you don't. No, you're good. You're good to go.
Yeah.
But, okay, you also... Okay, it's only 5% chance. But if you go on the machine, you have forced everyone else on Earth to go through it as well.
So I disintegrate 5% of people.
Yeah.
And I get rid of communism.
Yeah. So what's the downside? I'm ready.
Okay, so mathematics here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this gets brutal. Like already, I'm going to say it already. 10% of people on Earth are like going to be dead within like a year or two from sickness.
Right.
From whatever it may be, like being overweight, cancer. So that's just the start. And then you go further down the line, like all the further sicknesses that people might have with that health thing. So it's 5%. Like this isn't even just about like, oh, the world would be better because everyone would have better well-being and the communist is gone. Like that's huge on its own. Like that's a huge moral consideration on its own. But also, like the amount of lives saved by that.
Okay, now, does consequentialism or utilitarianism, Does that come into this at all?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There is the two. Because utilitarianism, which would be the for the greatest good,
Yeah.
totally. Utilitarianistically, you would totally do it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, should you at all even care about that in the slightest? Like, because I don't know if I'm ever... If something's on the side of utilitarians or consequentialists, I don't know if I want to be on that side.
So then, deontologically...
Yeah. I think you would... Well, deontology would sort of rely on the idea that what would a rational being do, right? So it would say, would everyone else be willing to go through with it? Probably.
Yeah.
And you'd say, probably yes.
Yeah.
But that gets kind of murky outside of deontology almost. But, well, what we should do with deontology is the attempt to do good. But that gets... I mean, Hitler was trying to do good. Maybe. I think he was.
Well, it would be the basically doing this, if we want to go the route of Hitler, would be the biggest eugenics ever.
Yeah. Yeah, but it would
be global eugenics.
It'd be less devastating, and it would, like you said, help more people than it would hurt.
Yeah.
But you'd be making the choice for others.
Yeah.
But, okay, but...
So, then one of the moral questions would be, ignoring the consequentialism, what about the let them curse my name? Like, are you going to be one of those characters? Because doing that would make you one of those people.
Okay, Evil Corp just phoned back. Hey, it's Evil Corp. Here, I'll put him on the line. Hey, it's Evil Corp here. So, this 90% chance, but you have to do it for the whole world thing, right?
Here's a 95.
95% chance. Okay, fine. You twisted my arm here. All right, you got a 95% chance that you won't die, but the whole world has to do it, right? So, I just got back with surveying the entire world, and you'll never believe it. 95% of them think it's a good idea as well. So they say, go ahead. So do you still do it? 95% of people have now said, go ahead.
I don't even need the 95 to say go ahead, I think. I would destroy my soul and murder 5% of the population so that I won't become a communist.
No, I don't... See, the thing is, who's worse than a communist or the person that's willing to kill 5% of Earth's population for... That's the same thing as a communist. That is a communist. That's what communists do. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Back on the line here. I had the chart upside down. It was actually 95% are against you going through the thing. Easy mistake to make. Anyone can make it. You still going to go through?
No, this is actually really hard because I'm flipping back and forth because just now I said I would do it. Now thinking about it further, I don't know if I would. It's really hard. Here's something else to throw at this. Just for someone who said, oh yeah, I would do it. So Evil Corp phones all right. So Evil Corp is all powerful. And what they tell you is true.
Yeah.
So
they're not all powerful, but they don't lie.
Yeah.
They've got good data.
What they tell you is true.
Yeah.
So, we figured out that for this machine to go off, the 5% you kill goes straight to hell.
Oh.
And hell is real.
And what happens if you... Is hell empty otherwise?
If you don't press it, then it's left a vagary if hell is real or not. So by doing it, it confirms hell is real and they are sent to it.
I think I wouldn't do it then, but I think...
Oh, creating hell? Or the guarantee to send them as well?
The guarantee to send them to hell.
Yeah.
And the reason I wouldn't do it is because in my mind, it's not that I believe in an afterlife. It's that in my world where people are put into a draft and everyone goes to war at least once before they turn 25, and 10% of them die, which was how things kind of used to be until like the 1800s, until the War of Jenkins' ear, I think. But before that time, it was like a 10% chance to die in war, basically, and a lot of young men took that, and I think it might have made society better, but it might not have. But with that bargain, even though people around you were dying or you yourself were dying, there was never a maliciousness to it. It was like, okay, society is better for it, but we don't hate those that fell. In fact, we honor and remember them and think highly of them. And so heaven, in that sense, the afterlife, is actually the bond between you saying, thank you for your service. Thank you for taking that risk with me.
Yeah.
And thank you for being the one that died instead of me, in a way. And that becomes heaven in its own right. It's not, if you believe in an afterlife, then it's like, we'll see each other in heaven. That's great. But even if you don't believe in it, it's like, and of course, I don't not believe in heaven. Like, I don't believe in things, right? So It's not that I believe there is no heaven. It's just, I don't have I'd like some sort of...
Oh, I just thought of something horrible with that 5%.
Yeah.
It's like, Well, what percent of the population is atheists? Because they're burning in hell. Or, well, then you might get some Christians there. Well, that's just a messed up level of judgment.
Yeah, but then, like, okay, Evil Corp here. So we've been talking with Satan, and we can install a jacuzzi in hell. They're letting us get one jacuzzi.
Yeah. Well,
So, okay, here.
well, actually, even
Have you heard about the infinite chessboard of angels and demons? You got people, and there's an infinite amount of people on an infinite chessboard.
Yeah.
Each person is on a spot on the chessboard. And you can either go to the devil or the angel for help. Okay. So if you go to the angel, then every person on the chessboard will be in hell. Every person that ever existed, every person that ever will exist will be in hell.
yeah.
And the angel can go down and he can touch one of them on the head, and they'll be sent to heaven. And then, a minute later, everyone next to them will be sent to heaven. And a minute later, everyone next to them will be sent to heaven. And maybe you say it's a day later. You can make it any length of time. You can make it 10 years later. Everyone next... Right, okay. So you go to the devil. Everyone on the chessboard is in heaven.
Yeah.
He flies down, he taps a person on the head, they get sent to hell.
Yeah.
And then, 1,000 years later, the next person next to them gets sent to hell. And 1,000 years later. And basically anyone that's ever heard this sort of thought experiment will say, well, obviously the angel's the right choice. Because even if, in the devil's case, you'd actually have more people spending more time in heaven because it's an infinite chessboard.
Yeah.
In the angel case, at least everyone eventually will go to heaven.
Yeah.
Whereas in the devil's case, everyone will eventually spend the rest of eternity in hell.
Yeah.
Even though in the devil's case, there's actually more people in heaven for longer.
Yeah.
Because it's an infinite chessboard. But,
So, back to the hell
Yeah.
drop. So with this 5% dying, so instead Evil Corp doesn't say they'll go to hell. They just say, all right, so if you don't do it, then we don't know if heaven or hell is real. Like, it's just vague. Like, metaphysical heaven and hell, I guess. Is that the right term? Like, they're actually existing?
I'm not sure. It could be. Yeah.
Anyway, so we don't know if you don't do it.
Yeah.
However, if you do it, 5% people will die. And whatever state their soul is in, they'll go to heaven or hell. And on top of that, I'm going to give you one more to that. This is a hell where you burn until you're sorry.
Okay, so if you...
So this is a hell. This is an infinite chessboard hell where the angel tapped one of the sinners. But people can also just skip the going to the chessboard. But if you end up in hell, then the angel did tap someone, basically.
Right. So you're saying there's a 95% chance you live, but the 5% that die go to heaven or hell based on their soul, but then there's a chance for redemption.
Yeah.
And there is a heaven in this case?
Yes.
Well, then I think that's a pretty obvious yes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so the risk is everyone... So on the plus side, everyone is healthy and happy and sound of mind. And the negative side is that you have to serve atonement in hell, maybe.
Yeah.
And there's a guaranteed heaven. Like, that seems like you could give me a 1% chance and I'd go for that one.
So, with that thought...
You give me a 0% chance.
See sort of where the Crusaders were coming from.
Or Muslim extremists.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. Or Jehovah's Witness. Or, yeah, any group like that. It's like,
Yeah.
obviously I'm going to do whatever I can to save people from eternal damnation.
Yeah.
Now, here's something that bothers me. It happens in a few fantasy stories. There's this idea of sacrificing your soul. And it doesn't sit right with me. It's like they...
It doesn't sit right with me at all.
They have an afterlife. And they're like, okay, they have an afterlife in this universe. But then they have this idea of your soul can... Now, that's almost the worst of... So right now, on Earth, we have this sort of atheist or the agnostic idea that there's nothing after you die. It's all sort of random chance. You don't continue to exist, or you never existed, or so. It's horrifying, terrifying, worst thing you can imagine, basically. Yeah. But you're not sure, I guess. But then you have, oh yeah, no, that definitely happens. But also there's heaven. It's like, but then it also just, it doesn't actually, it's not even the ultimate sacrifice, because then you go, is there a meta heaven? Like, what happens?
Yeah, well, so, the meta heaven
in
the game is life. So you die, and then you're brought virtual reality into the next world.
Yeah, and then you skip a step and you go into the next one.
And then you go to the next one, and there's like, oh, these people are... We have to assume spoiler things, right?
Sort of, yeah. But I mean, okay, here's the thing about the game is life, though, right? It's not a spoiler. It's the same thing over and over again.
But the NPCs are people of a higher level up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is an NPC generated by the game. It's like, no, they're just 2 levels higher. Also,
it's a neat thought experiment, but I think if you read it for the thought experiment, not for the story. Yeah. And also, it's way too long.
Yeah.
No,
There's so many books in it as well.
Yeah, but
like you can get it basically after the first book.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that good of a story. I think it's a nice thought experiment, but it's kind of like what I understand happened to the Men in Black. Although I'm slightly doubtful. I think the Men in Black might just be a bad movie. But The Game is Life, when it was written, was a pretty cool thought experiment. The idea has now, not just from that, but from other sources, spread so much throughout the world in various ways. I don't think it's that unique anymore in terms. I don't think it's an space that The Game is Life explores as. Now that said, people might say the same about Lord of the Rings. But,
you need a starting point,
but also I think stories like Lord of the Rings actually did it best in a lot of ways, and so it's still worth going back to. So The Game is Life, you could say the same thing too potentially.
Yeah, one of the main things with The Game is Life, which again with the meta heaven is uncertain, but if there's a virtual reality, then it's turtles all the way down.
Yeah,
it's kind of what gets it. But with like the meta heaven, like in Malazan Book of the Fallen, where like someone dies and then their soul gets destroyed after they die.
Well, actually, so you haven't read the Forge of Darkness series, right?
No.
But this isn't really a spoiler because it's hinted at all throughout the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Yeah. But when people died before Hood was a god, they just went to nothing. Hood's war on death was him actually saying, okay, there
should be a heaven.
There should be a heaven. I'm going to create heaven. Because what was supposed to happen is that your god is supposed to take you into your own personal heaven.
Yeah.
But none of the gods were doing it. And so Hood said, I'm going to create a heaven because all these lazy gods aren't doing their job. So I'm going to create an afterlife for all the people who aren't brought to their own heaven, which is basically almost everyone.
And unfortunately, the guy who made heaven was a Greek philosopher, basically.
Yeah, but also, he didn't do a very good job. Like, you just kind of exist as a corpse in an endless plane forever and ever.
Yeah.
But I was reading a bit about the Fields of Asphodel. Well, sort of. I saw them referenced in Heroes of Might and Magic recently. And it's sort of this purgatory that you can't leave, right?
Yeah.
And it's if you died like a coward or a few other things, but also if you died as a child.
Yeah.
It's like, what did the child do? It's so rough.
Yeah, well, so it's like in Skyrim, soul gems, right?
Yeah, those are kind of messed up.
You're some bandit, right? You're scraping by. Then this hero comes by, shouts at you, you go flying. Then they steal your soul into a gem to enchant, not even to enchant, to recharge their sword so it burns.
Well, what was it? There was
you can go into the soul cairn in Skyrim, and that's like where there's multiple places souls can end up in Skyrim. One of them is the soul cairn, and that's where the soul gems leave. And it's basically like you're trapped in this horrible purgatory, and you can be destroyed there. And that's the same thing. Have you been in Skyrim?
Yeah.
So when you're trying to make it to the hall...
Wait, this will be spoilers for the end of Skyrim, I take it? Yeah, okay. Just for the next couple minutes.
So when you're trying to make it to the hall of the...
Sovngarde. Yeah.
And people are going there. And Alduin's flying by and scooping up souls and eating them.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. Like, these people are supposed to be going to Sovngarde, and they're getting killed by Alduin. Like, he is an evil that needs to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Because their internal soul is getting consumed by a dragon.
I also, the Daedra can also...
take your soul forever.
So there's a quest... There's mods that fix this, but it's the House of Horrors. Mal Balog basically forces you to kill this priest.
Over and over again.
And then he'll devour his soul. But I used a soul-stealing weapon on the priest. So in my headcanon, I saved him. But it doesn't actually do anything to the mission.
Put him into a soul gem.
Yeah. So there is worse fates than the soul cairn.
Yeah. Well, he tortured...
But the soul cairn also has those giant crystals that, devour souls if you get too close to them.
Yeah, so Malbog did something kind of worse, though, than just devouring his soul. He tortured him until he swore his internal loyalty to Malblog, and then he killed him and consumed his soul.
Mm.
Because he was a priest of a different Daedra, that his soul should have gone to her, but instead it went to Malblog.
Right.
So he basically tortured the guy into his insanity to serve him, then he consumed him.
Is there any gods in Skyrim?
Yes.
Like Talos, I guess?
So the 12 are gods, or whatever, and Talos joined them. So there's the Daedra, which are incredibly powerful entities, and then there's the actual gods, and then it's uncertain if Talos is a god or not.
Right.
But the 9 or whatever they are, I think it's the 9, and then
And what is like I don't know if you've done this quest. You can go into a glacier in the North Sea, and there's this crazy old wizard trying to open a Dwemer artifact.
Yeah.
And then if you try to leave, your path gets blocked by this eldritch horror made of tentacles and moving eyes. And
So that's the Dragonborn DLC.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a Daedric entity, that horrible nightmare eldritch horror.
Right. And the worst thing about it is it's one of the few NPCs in the game. You can't skip its dialogue.
Yeah.
And it talks and talks and
Yeah.
talks. At,
There's a Dwemer inside that artifact.
I've never actually gotten it open.
Yeah, me too.
I've
But I know there's a Dwemer inside there, and he can't leave.
because I've gotten the scrolls, but the problem is the scrolls weigh 20 pounds each, and so every time I get the scrolls, I get sick of the game and stop playing basically. And also, I really don't want to like serve its purposes.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, that thing is in the DLC. I think it's a separate entity in that quest. I think that quest is base game, but that's the entity in the Dragonborn DLC.
right, where you go to that other world where
And you fight a Dragonborn.
yeah, because in this one I think you just need to get 2 scrolls and then bring them to the dude, and like this isn't even the Moth Priest quest.
Yeah.
Which are a thing apparently, Moth Priests, but
It's a weird name for guys who look for the
maybe because
The
they
scrolls.
like, but they're kind of like the opposite of moths, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
moths eat paper, but paper like destroys them.
Yeah, they get eaten by the paper.
Yeah, but you're able to read the like you're able to look into the past with this scroll, right?
Yeah, you're Dovahkiin.
Right. So why don't like Dovahkiin? They're rare, but they're not like unheard of, right? Like the whole Dragonborn quest is that there's another Dovahkiin.
From thousands of years ago, who's become immortal because he sold his soul to that eldritch horror.
Okay, but there's at least they can appear a few times, right?
And he appears and kills other ones that show up.
Okay, so there's a bunch of them then, and he's just killing them. But they do exist, right?
Yeah.
So in theory, instead of the entire Moth Priest order going blind, you could just hire the Dovahkiin.
Well, I think it's literally the Elder Scrolls. People who are supposed to look at them can look at them. And the Moth Priests are basically nutcases who want to look at them even though they shouldn't.
Right.
And so it's like, because I think you can look at them in the other games without being the Dovahkiin, like your different kinds of chosen in the other games. But I think it's sort of like, if you're Jim the farmer, right? And the Elder Scroll is going to show you that you need to crop your fields, plant your fields on the left side instead of the right. You open up and look at, you'll be fine. Whereas a Moth Priest comes along and they look at, they'll get like their eyes burnt out or disintegrated because they're not Jim the farmer.
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't ever found the Elder Scrolls in any of the other Elder Scrolls games. I don't know if they're in them or not. But in Oblivion, you aren't a chosen one. The king's son is the chosen one, and you're his like sidekick basically. And so I wonder in Oblivion if you found a scroll and it just, I can imagine there's a
Well, you can't even open them without the help of the priests.
there's an item in Morrowind called the Boots of Blinding Speed.
Yeah.
If you put them on, you go blind, but you move like 8 times as fast. And so I could see Morrowind like permanently blinding you if you read on this one. That'd be pretty funny. Oblivion kind of did stuff like that as well, where what Oblivion didn't have. I think essential NPCs are basically a Skyrim thing.
Yeah.
But what Oblivion would do is if you like killed all the members of the Dark Brotherhood, let's say, and you broke the game progressing, it would actually a message would actually pop up that says like the weave of the universe is broken and the world cannot continue, but you can continue to play in this broken world if you choose. And
You just broke fate.
yeah, you ruined the story, but keep going. And in Daggerfall, you have a month to do this first quest. If you fail the first quest, you lose the game.
Yeah.
But the game doesn't end because it's meant to be a medieval life simulator, right? So it's like, oh, you lost. Have fun.
Yeah.
Just do whatever. So yeah, so a lot of the series and Skyrim even I didn't realize this because I didn't beat it until recently, and I would just play around in the world. But I finally was like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this great big RPG. But it's actually very similar to the other in the series where the main quest is like 5 hours long.
Yeah.
And when you beat the quest, the game doesn't end. It doesn't even do credits. It goes, okay, now you can explore the world. It's like that was the tutorial.
Well, there's 2 different credits. You can either get shouted at by old men or you can get shouted at by dragons.
Yeah. But that's actually the end of the tutorial.
Basically, yeah.
Because after that, they actually say to, like Parthenax, or I assume one of the old men, basically says to you like,
They have the greybeards.
now you can go out into the world
Yeah.
and do your thing. And it's oh
Make the world a better place or worse, I don't care.
yeah, they just like go off and, there's a whole big civil war. Like, there's actually bigger quests than the main quest.
There's a Civil War, there's the Archmage quest, there's the Dark Brotherhood quest, there's the DLC quest with the vampires trying to knock out the sun.
There's the thief quest. I think the vampire quest is probably longer than the main quest. Yeah.
Yes, it's much longer.
And even the what's it called? The Black Reaches or whatever, like that underworld. Yeah. That has some really long quests in there too that are much more in depth. And I think like fighting the Obsidian Knight or whatever he's called, like he's much stronger than Alduin. The Ebony is much stronger than Alduin.
Yeah.
Although I've heard there's something weird about him. He's like the easiest enemy in the game or something in some way because
you can get him trapped on rock ledge and shoot him with arrows.
I thought he was like level scaled weird or something. Like he's kind of the opposite of.
He doesn't scale. He's always level 60.
Right. So if you get to him at the wrong time, then
he will wreck you.
Right.
Now one of the problems with the Alduin is if you've modded the game repeatedly when you get to him, and then he does this shout where he calls down random meteorites, those can one-shot you. It makes him a very hard fight.
2 mods I think that are essential to Skyrim. I've added the End Times mod and Living Takes Time. So the End Times mod, if you take more than 365 days to beat the game, you lose.
Alduin consumes the...
Yeah. And now there's actually an option that you can toggle, which I always do, which is after 365 days, Alduin attacks you on the overworld with the same, like, meteors falling down and everything. And if you somehow beat him, then he retreats for another, like, month, and he comes back stronger each time, and you can just keep doing that. And then the Living Takes Time mod, every action you do takes, like, 12 hours, basically. So if you, like, forge a blade, it actually takes 12 hours. If you brew a potion, it takes, like, an hour. And the reason they work well together is because you're like, oh no, 365 days, that's only a year to go from a prisoner to someone that can beat Alduin. But there's not really any reason for time to pass in Skyrim. Like I said, the main quest takes about 5 hours, right?
Yeah.
And Skyrim operates at 20 minutes to real world minute.
Yeah.
So you're looking at about 100 hours. So that's 4 days.
Yeah.
So basically Skyrim takes about 4 in-game days to beat.
Yeah.
So that's why you need the Living Takes Time to...
Well, I mean, it depends if you're using fast travel and sleeping to make it daytime so you can see.
Yeah, well, fast travel doesn't actually take any time.
And if you get locked in prison...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure fast travel doesn't actually advance the clock. There's mods that do that, but...
Being locked in prison advances time.
Yeah. And sleeping does, but there's not much reason to sleep. Unless you are doing survival mode or...
Survival mode or you're a vampire.
And just trying to pass time. Yeah. Okay. Or if you're trying to pass time to make it light again, yeah.
Yeah. And there's certain people that will only show up to do their quests at a certain time of day.
And then if you really, really want to min-max, there's Lover's Comfort and whatnot, which is a reason to sleep. But that's like a very small bonus for...
And if you really, really want to min-max, you can like beat Skyrim in like less than an hour.
If you...
Like the speedrun of Skyrim where you get all horse and launch yourself into orbit and you go through all the essential quest things and you teleport yourself around the map by doing all that. Yeah. You can beat Skyrim very fast.
Although, well, like I said, though, you don't actually beat Skyrim, right? Like you beat
the main quest.
You beat the main quest because it's not meant to be. It's meant to be an open world that you just, which
And then you play the Dragonborn DLC and you have a 25% chance of getting a bug in the final combat, which freezes your game in that combat, and you have to use console commands to beat it. Get the patch. That's a different mod. That's essential for Skyrim.
Well, like the unofficial patch.
Yes. It's very important.
There's reasons not to get the unofficial patch. Like if you like using some, because it actually changes some of the exploits and glitches, which I never really cared for. But if you really had fun with those, then it does get rid of them, which could be a shame. Can I change topics here?
Yeah.
All right. So you're safe for spoilers now if you've been skipping through and this somehow works. But if you somehow land on this bit of text right here,
could make a giant red screen on the video. Spoilers.
Spoilers ended. You just have a loud droning noise for the entire time we're talking.
Well, no, it can just be a visual cue. Like, just scroll to where it's no longer red.
I actually heard this great one where they had the screen was going to have for the next 15, like, no, it was like 1.5 minutes or something. It's going to have something that could trigger epilepsy. And so they said, look away until you hear a loud duck quack. Because that way you don't have to look at the screen to figure out when to skip, right? Because it's going crazy. I thought that was pretty clever. So I've been playing around a bunch more with different generation AI-generated media, like music and video and pictures, that sort of thing. Yeah. And I've been having a lot of fun with the music, especially. I've been making some songs I really like. And I was thinking these songs, it's really cool when you put in your own lyrics and you get a song that's kind of the lyrics you wanted or the lyrics you made. It feels very personal to you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, this is an amazing song. But I'm pretty sure you'll notice if you go to like the Suno subreddit, for instance, there is a lot of people sharing their songs. And same with the Stable Diffusion subreddit. There's a lot of people sharing their pictures. There's very few people upvoting any of those images or any of those songs because they don't care. They want to share their thing.
Yes.
And it's like because it doesn't even sound that good, I think, a lot of the time to an outsider. It's like, I have no special connection to these lyrics. It's just like another song on the radio. It's fine, I guess, but it's nothing special. It's maybe average, which is pretty impressive, but it's still just kind of an average song.
It's all AI slop.
Well, it's not even bad. It's just like average, right?
And slop's not bad. It's
I guess,
just slop.
Yeah, but it's not slop to the person that made it. It's something that's very personal to them. Even those one girl, like it's always the same AI face things. Those they're so lacking in creativity. But if that's the only thing you've ever made and it's got the hair color you want, you're like, this is amazing.
Just misspell your one girl and you'll get a more interesting image.
Actually, you can give them names, and because names are associated with features, not in reality, but because of the way things are inputted into the labeling.
Here's the thing, actually, on that use of non-reality. I think in reality, it actually has impact. It's like a reflection of the human mind. Like even the random names you put in there.
No. The names do something because they have given certain images names.
Yeah.
But it's not that all Davids on Earth actually look like a certain way.
No, but if you hear the name David, you will think of a David.
Right.
And it might actually look like the AI David.
Maybe, and that would be but the people that make the AI are actually specifically choosing names and faces to, they're saying, okay, this person we are going to call this person.
They're choosing it and not letting it happen then.
Yeah, so it's not a natural phenomenon.
If you let it naturally occur, then that might be a reflection of human.
But not all pictures have a person's name of who the picture. Now that would be interesting if you actually gathered a bunch of yearbook photos.
Yeah.
Like millions of yearbook photos with all the names labeled already, and then that'd be interesting if there was actually like, this is what a Sarah looks like, this is what a John looks like. That would be really interesting. But yeah, so with these AI generations, what I've been wondering is what is the consequence and the future of all media being custom to each individual? So I was my first Heroes tabletop RPG combat was bogging down a bit, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So I went on to Chatbot Arena, and I gave it like 2 pages from my rulebook, and I said, what's wrong with these rules? Why is it so slow? And it gave me some really good ideas. Like, I was genuinely impressed. It wasn't like it was like, oh yeah, do it more like D&D or something, right? Like, it had new ideas based on the rules I gave it. It's like, okay, you have this system called penetration. Have you tried implementing this instead? Have you tried... Like, it was actually specific to my case, and I was very impressed by it. And I can see a future not too far from now where you say, I want my own tabletop RPG for me, or I want my own RPG for me. I want my own... Like, that. This is why when people say, oh, this is going to make, like, Skyrim great, like, Elder Scrolls 6, you're going to have NPCs that react to you. And I've been saying, no, it's going to be way more than that. They're going to be the ones making the games, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of what I mean, where you're going to be able to go to the Suno of video games and say, I want a video game like this. There's already AIs that you can do that with. You can give them a picture and they make a video game based on it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a cheap trick because they're basically just making a platformer based on the image. But, you know, it's still something.
I mean, that has existed forever.
Like, yeah, a human could do that easier. Like, but it is something that, it's kind of 99% of the tasks people try to get AIs to do right now. It's like rotoscoping and like web searches, and it's like, you can do those so much better without AI. You're trying to fit a circle into a square hole right now. Like, the thing AI excels at is data synthesis and brainstorming. Yeah. Like, here's an idea no one's ever heard of. What do I do?
I mean, even with the rotoscoping, like, what was cooler would be having it do not keyframe, but filling in between keyframes.
Yeah, which there's already programs that do that as well.
There's programs that kind of do it. They can't do it in traditional animation. I'm talking about traditional animation because you've done this in your video editing. That's basically what you're doing. With you have an image, and then you play 5 seconds, and you move it to a different location, and then it moves on a line in between.
Right.
That is what auto-filling keyframing is. So that's the same thing in animation. What they'll do is they'll have like a dog's head. and then they want the dog to move forward, so they'll just move it forward, it'll move through the keyframes, and they'll interpolate in between there. What I'm talking about is you draw Scooby-Doo in one pose, and then you draw Scooby-Doo in another pose, and it figures out how this image will move from there to there without being some eldritch nightmare like, Morph Cut.
Right.
Like Morph Cut in between them, that wouldn't be an animation, but actually...
Right. So it'd be Scooby-Doo in a different room even, and it'd be like, okay, so he has to walk into this room. And,
yeah, you could do that if you wanted to.
Sora does that already, which... You've seen demos of Sora, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're able to give it, like, here is the end scene, and you have 2 minutes to move this to this, and it's not released to the public, but there's things that can do that now, And that is a great use for AI. Another use for AI... Basically, AI is great for the kind of stuff you would go into a forum and ask for help for.
Yes.
Like coding. It's really good for coding. Like, how do I do this with coding? How do I do this with coding? Or it's great for therapy.
Like you said, the brainstorming. So one of the things I did, I was kind of disappointed because I used ChatGPT. I still haven't gotten one that's not ChatGPT. But I was like, I want a library in my game. So I'm doing D&D campaign. And I actually gave them a library. So it has a mechanic, which is they can spend an hour in the library. And if they do that, they can roll a dice, and they have a chance of getting a level 1 spell book, or a book with information that's relevant to them. But I wanted there to only be 300 books in this library. So I asked the AI, give me 300 fantasy book names. And so it just went brrrr, and they got rather repetitive after a bit. But now, whenever they search this library for a book, they'll make their rolls, whatever the check is. And I was like, alright, so you found The Sorcerer's Watch. And then I just delete that from the list, and once I'm out of book names to tell them, they're out of books in the library.
Yeah. That said, like, that's very good for building your custom lists, obviously.
Yeah.
There are tools like Markov chain generators, and there is, what's it called? It's called the Saphira's Codex, I think, which is just like a bunch of human-made lists of random stuff like that. But maybe nobody did a library like this, or maybe, so you can get your custom one.
Yeah, I could be more specific with the library. Also, once I'm done with that, I could then, because I'm like working on a D&D campaign, it's like, so I have this idea for a dungeon. I have this, in it, but I'm going to have trouble with this one thing. What can I do there? And I know you hate it, it's the all-in-one tool.
Yeah. Well, no, it is the all-in-one tool. That I don't hate it. I think it's...
Well, I'm talking about like the phones. You're like...
Oh, I see. Yeah. No, I think... Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because I don't hate it right now.
Yeah.
But phones were this very neat idea when they were pitched to the world, right? And then it turned out having everything in one place is probably not a good idea. So AI might become the same, where it's like, maybe we shouldn't make the... But the thing people do with these AIs is...
Well, I think one of the things with it is there's AIs better at certain things than other things. And so you'll get the list-making AI, and then you will get the dungeoneering AI.
But there's this idea... Now, it's not called Mixture of Experts. That's actually a different thing. But it's called something of experts, like a group of experts. And how it works is you ask a question, and based on the question, a little subroutine chooses which AI to talk to already. So to you, it would look like it was all talking to the same.
So whatever it's called is lame. You call it the Council of Elrond, or something like that, or the Wizard's Council.
Or the Council of Intelligences.
Yes, it's like a council, and it's like different advice. You know what you do, right? This would be a product you can do, and it would be gimmicky, and you might change it later on to be more modern and have its UI better. But for making like software, like 2008 sort of to 2012 software, which is actually my favorite UI era of software, what you do with this is you have a digital room, and each AI is like this old man or old woman or whatever with like robes and beard.
You know the Bionicle video game? Yeah. Like the one from 2005 or something, where you stand in the center and you spin around and it zooms in on a Bionicle and they step forward and they do a little cheer. Yeah. It's like that, but each is like a wizard.
Yeah, or in Diablo, where you select your character and they step forward.
But I like the idea of like it rotates around.
It could do that, whatever. It could
or like in Dungeon Keeper, where it like the map is like on a different wall and you go like...
Yeah, so it could do that.
Yeah.
But it's basically this UI... This could be completely unnecessary UI, but basically you give your question, and then like one of the council members will basically like, get off his chair and step forward and generate.
Well, actually, the thing is,
advisor.
Shortly after this mixture of wizards is created, you will be able to ask it to change its UI to be like that, because it'll be able to personalize, right? So my question becomes, what is the consequence of this? Like, so I've talked about before how watching sports, the people, or the, I don't know, the people we were people who raised us, let's say.
Yeah.
Not our parents necessarily, just everyone around us, roughly.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but sports snobs look down on people that played sports, like the dumb jock sort of thing. And you see that a lot in media too, like, oh, because most writers are losers,
Nerds.
Yeah.
Losers.
They're not. They're
I won't even call them nerds. They're just losers.
Yeah, a lot of writers were losers. So not all of them, but there's a lot of writers that were losers, and so they look down on people that are healthy and look after themselves and have friends.
Yeah.
But I got so carried away with insulting the writers, I just totally forgot what I was going on about here. But the value of sports is actually huge because it allows you to have something to talk to your friends with over the water cooler. Like, did you see that game last night? Did you see
that ludicrous display?
Did you see that ludicrous display? You see that the Oilers won? I don't know if they did.
No, they lost.
Oh, okay. Well, you see the Oilers, but that was the first time in 18 years, I think, the Oilers have been to the finals.
That's the first time in my entire life.
Oh, so it's longer than that.
No, it's not longer. What I'm saying, this is the first time in my entire life I've cared about the results of a hockey game.
The Oilers have always been my favorite team, so but for most of my life they've been terrible.
I haven't paid attention to hockey at all, and then it's like, oh, a Canadian team has a chance of winning.
Now, I believe the Sharks, the San Jose Sharks, I think are owned by Gretzky. Yeah. So it's like, what is a Canadian team?
Well, also that's the thing. So the team that won the Panthers, the
Florida
Panthers, I'm pretty certain like a good amount of that team are Canadians.
Yeah.
And then there's like one of the guys is from the Netherlands in that team.
Yeah, well, that was there was the Czech. I'm suspicious of this because Czechia, or whatever they call themselves now, but the Czech Republic, they have a international hockey tournament, which they have won 3 times in a row. International hockey tournament. When they're up against people like Canada and Sweden and Russia, it's like, and the Czech Republic of all people is winning this. But if you look at the players on Team Canada, for instance, if you look at, there's a flag by each of their names, and about like 95% of the flags are American flags. And I was like, what? Team Canada is mostly made up of Americans? How does that work? But then you look at each player, and it's like, oh, they play for an American team, but they're all Canadians.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, because they poach a bunch of our people.
But anyways, so that was like the first time I cared about hockey, but back to the AI.
So if everyone has their own music that they like, and everyone has their own, I think it was the CEO of Bumble was talking about the dating app. She was talking about how everyone could have an AI that they train, and then the AIs could go on dates with each other. So they would train the AIs to be like yourself, and then the AIs would go on dates with each other and figure out who was most compatible.
So there's our Archie comic.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's one of the sci-fi ones, like they're in the future, or it's one of the sort of horror ones. It's kind of the idea of the body snatcher. So basically, let's just... I'm going to make up part of this because I don't remember properly what the story's in there. So Dilton... Archie goes to Dilton. And he says, I have this problem. I have to get my homework done, and I need to go on a date with Betty, and I need to practice for the sport thing. I just don't have enough time. And Dylan's like, oh, well, what coincidence. I've just finished making this humanoid android that can do work for you. And so...
So it can be you, basically.
It can be you. It's actually Jughead, this is one I remember, but we're just going to stick with my myths. So it can be you. So it can do this stuff. And so this thing goes out and it does his exam for him, and then Archie can practice the football and go on a date with Betty. And then later on, it's going on the date with Betty, and it's living his life, and he's just like in his basement on a couch potato, and it's doing all the things for him. Sorry, I remember the comic now.
Yeah,
but
the point stands. Yeah,
it was a second Dilton. Actually, he went to a different guy who made a second Dilton.
Yeah, but the point stands that, and that is actually how I think I talked about this before. Where that's actually how technology tends to work. It tends to replace all those inconvenient downtimes and let you work more.
That is literally the line in the comic with Dilton.
But that's how it happens in real life too, right? Like I was thinking.
Yeah, he fries it with a giant electronic magnet.
Dating apps are a great example, actually, because they take all the difficulty out of dating and going out and meeting people. You just hook up with someone, and then you're good to go, and you've got a person who's already matched with you, and so you've cut out the middleman. But so you can do more work, right? Instead of, okay, I need to block aside a bunch of my time to go out, do sports, meet people, talk to people, maintain my hygiene, brush my hair, like all these enjoyable little gentle activities. It's like I don't have to do those anymore because I've got this dating app, which it'll choose the right person for me, and then I can just take a shower before the date and I'm off.
Yeah.
And now I have more time to work. And now I can't remember the name of the article. I think I talked about it before, where he basically pointed out that every time an invention has saved time, it has
It's made people work harder.
Yeah, it has always cut into recreation rather than work.
Yeah.
Like, okay, take a cell phone for instance, right? You can phone your friends. It's a little bit stressful, let's say, but you can phone your friends to arrange hanging out instead of only hanging out when you meet up at the market and saying, hey, you're doing something this Sunday. So it's like, okay, I get to see them a lot more. And it's very convenient, it's very nice, but little stress. And I think that the stress of, I actually do think the stress of phoning someone, it's very minor compared to the benefit of getting to see them, getting to do something. Yeah. I think it's very minor. However, the stress of only running into them in the market and talking to them is zero, and you still get the benefit. And if you don't see them, then you get to still go to the market. You still get to still go to the park, because what you're doing is, right, you guys go to the park to see if your friend's there okay, do you want to do something? Okay, then we'll do. But if they're not there, you still got to go to the park.
Yes. Again, I'm going to take it back to Archie Comics. They go to Pop's little chocolate shop to see who's there.
Yeah.
And then the gang hangs out there, and that's where they meet up.
Yeah.
And then they can go,
And if nobody's there,
yeah,
you still get to buy a milkshake and talk to Pop and have a good time. And so there was zero stress, because it doesn't actually matter. You might think, oh, well, one thing's fun, but one thing's even more fun. But it doesn't actually matter. As long as it's positive, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to worry about sense of scale.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're having fun. You're having fun. Stop ruining. It's the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I'm only having 10 units of fun when I could be having 20. It's like, you don't know that. And the cost of switching from 10 to 20 could be minus 15 if you are even being that utilitarian when you shouldn't be. Because I have seen many times dogs that want to play inside and play outside be torn. They'll look back and forth. They'll run back and forth between the person going inside and the person going outside, to the point where they can't do activities with either of the people. And so the fear of missing out, rather, if they just picked one and committed, they could have had a great time. And you can look at dogs a lot to see what people do without filters, right? Because people have justifications for everything they do. But we're just doing the same thing as the dog.
Yeah.
And if the dog had just chosen one thing and stuck with it, maybe it wasn't the optimal fun, but it was still fun. And there is no optimal fun. It's yes or no. It's like, are you having fun or not? That's really what's going on. Now, there is fake fun. There's
going for a hike.
Well, I'm thinking more like the sort of this seeking the addiction of, I just need to see the more and more extreme thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that, like the endless YouTube videos or the endless porn or whatever it might be. That's not real fun. That's just desperately seeking Now, it might be fun if you do it in the right amounts, but if you're just desperately seeking stimulation, then that isn't actually real fun. But as long as it's real fun, the quality of it does. It's like you can go to Pops or you can go to Jughead's. It's like maybe seeing Jughead is more fun, but it really doesn't actually matter. It's just yes or no.
Yeah.
But so I think that if everyone has their own songs and everyone has their own movies and everyone has their own games, you don't talk to even now, there is no longer, oh, did you get to level 12 on Super Mario World yet? Like, how did you get past you don't even do that anymore, because there's so many games now that I think this is why people play AAA games. Just now, I had this thought. Because AAA games are mostly garbage now, and they're overpriced, and they're not that fun. And there's amazing indie games that are way better, right? But if you buy a AAA game, you have that connection with other people, right? And so I think that's why AAA games are still popular. If something's popular, it's worth watching because it's popular. That's why movies are garbage, but everyone watches them still. Instead of going back and watching the backlog out there that exists of amazing old westerns and kung fu movies and classics like.
And what's tragic,
The Godfather, and
what's tragic is people are like, these were the popular movie, and so it starts with, this is bad, I'm angry because it's bad. That's the first step, and then apathy hits of, I can't even care anymore about this.
Right.
And it's like, what's the point of getting this new game, or the point of watching this new movie?
But well, I don't know. I think it could be good to just stop buying garbage, right? Like force the companies to change. Like I really don't.
Well, no, that's the thing that's happening now is the apathy is hitting and people aren't even bothering more. Like anger is you want something to change, and so you'll still buy because you want it to change. Whereas apathy is you're just done.
Well, I think you should. If you're buying something and you're angry and you want to change, I think you're being stupid. Like, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Like, I really don't get that. Like, I'm going to pay for this and hate it. It's like, just don't buy. Like, the whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing, right? I don't know if you saw any of that discourse.
I know some.
But basically, there's a consulting company that adds their own values into games. Like, you go to them and they say, yeah, you need more black people, you need more disabled people, whatever. And so people made this list of games that Sweet Baby Inc. has consulted for, and they said, don't buy any games on this list. And there was this big furor about it, right?
Yeah.
One of those games on the list was...
Shadow's Gambit.
Don't know it.
I bought it.
Okay. But there was another game, though. It's called... I can't remember. It's kind of like Breath of the Wild, but it's like all red, and you're this demon that drives around on this motorbike. But it has like overwhelmingly positive reviews. It's a game that everyone that plays it loves, right?
Yeah.
And people are putting on this list, like, it's getting tons of... Like, just recently, once that Sweet Baby Inc. thing went up, people were giving it thumbs down because, oh, it's Sweet Baby Inc., it's Sweet Baby Inc. But it's like, how about, instead of it being, oh, I like this or I don't like this, therefore I'll give it a up vote or a down vote, or I'll... How about you, if you like the game, you buy it. If you don't like the game, you don't buy it, and you let the company wither and die. Instead of it being this, like, did I become the, like, smug anti-culture war, like, oh, you know, I don't care about it. Like, I think it's just customers need to take back their power and stop just these people are making horrible things while I'm giving them my money. I can't stop giving them my money. Why?
So one part of it, so this is why I said Shadow's Gambit, is it's a part of the Shadow series of games. And I've played Shadow-like games, and Shadow Gambit was the last game that company was releasing. And it's a really weird, like, the Shadow games are really weird. Like, Shadow Tactics are part of them.
Oh, okay. Like Blade of the Shogun?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, those games are cool, yeah.
Yeah, so Shadow Gambit is the last one. It's a pirate-based game.
Oh, I thought their latest one was a cowboy one.
No, it's pirates.
Okay.
You're pirates, and you've got, like, these weird curses. Oh, each one of your pirates has a weird curse, and you're fighting against this evil cult. And I've only done this first level because the game confuses the ever-living heck out of me. I don't know how to play them. I like them, but I don't know how to play them. But anyways, one of the things I did observe, even when I first started, is it sort of shows you an introduction of all the characters that are going to be in the game, and they're all incredibly ugly. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the art direction they went with. That's fine. I'm more here for the game than anything else.
Yeah. Incredible tactics games.
Yeah. And that's what I care about. But it's a shame that, like, all your characters are kind of hideous. And then it comes out that they basically had, like, a whole bunch of art direction they're going, and Sweet Baby basically made them scrap that to have ugly characters. And so, for me, it's not of like, oh, this is horrible. It's like, oh, this could have been more aesthetically pleasing. And now that I know that someone actively affected that, instead of this was their own choice, someone, like, maliciously basically destroyed art, that pisses me off a little bit. And so that's partly where that rage comes from, because beforehand, I didn't know. I just thought, well, this is a weird choice, but whatever. But now it's like, this was done with malicious instead of incompetence.
But I think if it was ugly enough and bad enough, right? You say, okay, there's essentially infinite games out there. Yeah. I can spend my time on a pretty looking game that also has good tactics. Like Age of Wonders is an amazing tactics game that has good graphics. I can play that instead. But it wasn't bad enough. And so my thought there is, it sucks that there's a company that's sucking the life out of things. But you had the choice to say, I don't want to buy this game because it looks ugly. But you decided, no, it's ugly, but I'll buy it.
Yeah.
And so the fact that someone did that, I think, doesn't necessarily matter. And because the free market is saying that it's acceptable to have an ugly game as long as it feels really good to play. Because that's what you're saying by giving them money, right? And you have actually made that choice for yourself, whether or not Sweet Baby Inc. existed.
Yeah.
And, some people love Kill Squad, which is like this anti-capitalist, most disgusting looking game on earth.
Yeah.
And I think it looks terrible, and I think the message of it is terrible. It's like this nihilistic anti-capitalist game, which you can buy, which I always find that kind of silly. But not in the...
Well, so... Here's the other thing with that partly. So because I basically only know, but like I haven't played the other Shadow Tactics games, I just know what sort of style they are. And so I was like, oh, this is the last Shadow Tactics game. And it was cheap at the time. That's part of the reason I bought it. It's like on an 80% sale.
Yeah, their games always go on huge sales.
Yeah, so it was an 80% sale or something. So I bought it. And like I saw a bit of it from the outset, and I didn't quite see the graphics closer up. Where am I going with this? I do have a point, but it's not fully formed in my mind. Part of me thinks, like, will the art get better? Will the direction get better? Because I haven't played through the game yet, so that's one part. And one of the problems with what Sweet Baby does to a game is they usually come to games during development when they attack them. And depending on how long a development is, the start of the game can actually be really solid. And I've played games where I do not like the beginning aesthetic, but the aesthetic later on is good, such as Pokemon. You start with a cute Charmander, then it becomes Charmeleon, and Charmeleon's kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But then you get Charizard. They actually have a Pokemon based around that, which is Feebast.
Yeah.
Feebast evolves
Feebas turns into Melodic. Yeah.
into Melodic. So that's part of it. You, in RPG, you're a peasant wearing dungarees. Then you get on a suit of armor that super exaggerates the male shoulders of the character and makes him look like this hulking giant. Or you get the female character who gets bikini armor at the high level.
Yeah.
So you don't exactly know what's going to happen. So you have the game, you don't know what's going to happen. Actually, it seems good. And then you see it's being infected after you bought it, and you trusted the company beforehand because they made games that you've liked before and games that have a good reputation. And then you find out it's infected partway through, which is usually when it happens. And then you're playing it and it's like, oh, there is never going to be the hot redhead I can add to my squad because she was deleted from the game files.
Right.
And also, because they switched to having this ideology more important, the beginning game is very solid because these are the demos they had. The first zone is very solid, and the later the game you get into it, it's going to become more and more slop, going to be worse coded, going to have worse ideas, going to lose the identity of the game. So sometimes you don't know, but your point still stands of don't buy slop or don't buy the garbage. But part of with the Sweet Baby is literally you can be tricked.
But I think that's where reviews come in as well,
Yeah.
right? Like you look at the reviews. And also, if you think, okay, every game Sweet Baby touches it's going to destroy, then you can avoid them, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think yeah.
Like why I go on the tirade is it's closer to...
But okay, here's the developers can't be trusted though, right?
Yeah.
Because Sweet Baby is a consultant, right?
Yeah.
They're not a publisher.
Yeah.
The developers didn't have to listen to Sweet Baby.
Yeah.
They chose to agree with the decisions that
Well,
Sweet
apparently
Baby...
Sweet Baby blackmails people.
Well, they chose to go along with the blackmail.
Yeah.
And they chose not to reveal it, if that's what Sweet Baby does.
Yeah, well, Black Myth has revealed that they blackmail people.
Weird. Like the Chinese Wukong game?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, they basically tried to extort like several $1 million from them, or they would like say we'll report on all these nasty things about your company and say it's sexist and bad. And
Yeah, see, that's the kind of thing. That's the thing actually. People, this is very important. There's this huge amount of hatred towards Sweet Baby Inc. is them talking about how they ruined this game or that game or this game or that game, right? And you know, my answer typically is just, well, don't buy the game, right? But then when I say that, people often say, well, they also did all this horrible stuff. Okay, but why wasn't that like step one? Like, why weren't you saying that first? Because that's the actual thing where you go, okay, this company is nasty and needs to be like, that's the kind of thing, that's the message you need to get. For the free market to work, you have to have information, right? You need to know what's going on. And you have to be like, okay, this company is blackmailing people.
Now, do take that with a grain of salt, because it could be Black Myth trying to do a marketing ploy because hating Sweet Baby is popular right now.
And they're trying to cover up the fact that
they are sexist, horrible.
Well, no, that I believe that Black Myth contains Denuvo.
Yeah.
Which, see, that's the kind of thing I care about more, is if a game has Denuvo or not. But no, I'm not saying... Actually, no, let me say. That's the kind of thing I care about more. Yeah. That Denuvo, for me, is the Sweet Baby Inc. for other people, right? Yeah. It's not that I'm right there wrong. It's like, if a game has Denuvo, I'm instantly not interested in it.
Yeah.
Because even if the game's great and Denuvo doesn't affect it, I don't trust Denuvo in the slightest. Because Denuvo is basically a combination of spyware and a horrible virus that you can never get out of your computer.
Yeah.
Because it actually it installs itself on the kernel level, I believe. So you can't like it basically has permission to do whatever it wants to your computer, and it makes stuff run like your entire computer runs slower.
Yeah.
And it's spyware. Yeah.
And
it's anti-cheat software in a single player game, which makes it even more ridiculous.
Yeah, so part of the thing that I said with Shadow Tactics is also very reflected on how I feel about Baldur's Gate 3. Is that sort of happened. Of the longer that... Like, that game wasn't under development a very long time. And it has 3 acts. And the first act is solid. All the characters are solid. The art direction's beautiful. And then you get to Act 2, and it's kind of, like, shaky, but it's okay. And then Act 3, like, their art direction, I just don't know where it went. Their story direction, don't know where it went. Like, the NPCs, the whole look of the world just gets kind of ruined. And then they released their digital art book, because I bought it as an early backer, so you get the digital art book. And it shows you their concept art. And I've played Divinity 1 and I've played Divinity 2. Divinity 1 has it worse than Divinity 2, but, like, you know how, like, the women are small and the men are huge? Like, it's exaggerated and ridiculous. Yeah. So you look at their digital art book, and the concept art was made by one of their original artists. And the artwork in there for the armors is gorgeous. Like, the plans he wanted to do, like, this is the light armor, this is the heavy armor, this is leather armor, this is full plate. These are, like, the different enchanted levels of them. So there's, like, +1, +2, +3. And you just look at it and you're like, holy cow, like, this is awesome. And then you play Baldur's Gate 3. And like, art books aren't always going to reflect the game. They're going to have to cut back things. They can't do stuff 3 in bundles. But you look at what they did, and you're like, they didn't even try. Like, they just degenderified the game. They got rid of it between the 2 characters. I heard something about, this is so cynical about body type A, body type B, is it's an excuse to be lazy because you don't need to make 2 skeletons.
Right, you can just...
Slim it slightly, bulk it slightly. And so, it's worse than that. It's a moral excuse to be lazy.
Yeah.
And I find that almost more egregious. And one of the things about it is when you play the... I was doing the tests for Baldur's Gate 2, it had pick male or female. They actually said that. They had the gendered symbols. And then when it's full release, it was like body type 1, body type 2. And they switched it partway through. And it's like... Larian hired a bunch of people and was under the remit of Wizard of the Coast.
But again, I think that's the chasing the AAA, right? Like, you didn't have to buy it in early access. As you know, like Larian, they're a trusted studio, great game designer, but you don't...
But one of the sad things that...
It's sad,
one of the things that buying early access did, though, is actually let me see that happen to it in real time. Yeah. So I did gain that insight.
But that's the same thing when people, like, everyone hate watches Rings of Power, or everyone...
Yeah, well, but before you say everyone's an idiot, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me thrice, watch it, I'm huge. But
Fool me twice... I prefer George Bush's. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't fool me again.
But what I'm getting at with that is you do have to allow stupidity. Or not allow but allow innocence.
Yeah.
To different levels. So I've been burnt now to the point where, like, you can give me the advice, thou shall not pre-order. These are all the reasons why you should. You can say, de nouveau is evil. You can say all this. And I'll go, yeah, you're a crazy guy who washes his hair with gasoline.
Yeah.
And so then I experience myself. It's like, oh. And then everything else you say to me is like, okay, I can have more credence lent to that as well. But you do need to be kicked in the balls to know it hurts.
But this all comes to the idea of apathy versus anger, right? That's what we were talking about. And I think now that you've reached the enlightened stage of apathy, I think it's actually an improved state over the... now, okay, anger is where you love something and you want it to... Apathy is very passive and... things aren't going to improve necessarily, right? But I think the thing is...
well, basically my hope is that Larian, they did lay off a lot of people because they're just no longer working on such a big game. And it's kind of a game out of their league of the style of game they make. Just like they work on games differently.
Yeah.
And so I kind of hope that they just go back to how they make games and like Divinity 3 will be Divinity 3.
Like I've said before, when you tell someone I don't like your game because of this, this, and this. That's incredibly valuable to them.
Yeah.
And so that anger, that is you actually saying, I believe in you still, but you're hitting them because you love them.
Yeah.
And so the apathy, the interesting thing that happens with apathy, right, is that
Apathy is when something dies.
Well, yeah, but it's also what happens is you have this horrible. You have like companies like Disney, right,
Yeah.
where everyone's just apathetic, and it kind of goes along because nobody cares, but they keep watching it because they can't. Their brains are too dulled to. That's where you're saying apathy is bad, right? You just keep watching it because you're like, I hate it, but whatever. It's Disney. I'm watching it. But then what happens is everyone just sort of stops at once, and the company dies. Like, I don't know if you know about.
No, that's what I was saying is the apathy kills it. I was actually saying that is everyone just like before you're hate watching it, you're like, I want it to be better again.
Yeah, you're trying to tell them this is how you improve. This is
and you're hoping to see something that you remember that's good, but apathy comes along and you're just like, I'm done.
So you're an anime, right? You've seen Evangelion.
No, I haven't seen Evangelion.
Isn't that like the most popular?
It's so boring.
That's like the robot and the little whiny boy and the.
Yeah, I haven't even bothered because of how boring it is.
Okay, but Studio Gainax, they've also done other famous. They're one of the most famous anime studios out there. They've done a lot of famous animes.
Okay, there's a lot of animes.
They're like the top one.
Okay.
They did Evangelion and the other ones that are famous.
Did they do Demon Slayer?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They did all the famous ones.
Okay.
I don't know what they are. You're supposed to help me out here.
I don't know either.
Okay, well, anyways, they're done. Their company's gone. Like, it was this $1 million or $1 billion company, and in the last few months or years, it has crumbled. Like, they're actually done. They're bankrupt. They're in court right now. They're losing everything. They're getting dissolved. They're getting torn apart. They're gone. And that's what happens with apathy. It's just people just, oh, no, I'm not interested. And boom, it collapses. And I think that might happen to Disney. Like, it might just be people are angry and then they stop being angry. So anger is actually good for the company. Like, if people are angry at your product, it means they care about it. And they're trying to, even if they're wrong, they care about it and they're trying to improve. But if they just stop watching, they're just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then, or they keep watching. This is what's even worse in a way, is when it rots. People keep watching, but they're like, they just forget one day. And everyone forgets one day at once. And they just they forget to tune into the newest season. And everyone does it at once and it's just gone. And that's kind of what you see with a lot of these new releases where it's like, well, it underperformed, but there's not really anyone talking about it. Just like if Mad Max Furiosa, I think, had that happen.
Or the X-Men 96 or whatever.
I didn't even know that.
So what happened, it's apparently it's kind of tragic, is so the old X-Men cartoon basically just ended. It got cancelled. And so some companies are like, okay, we're going to revive it and we're going to do X-Men again. And
it's the CalArts art style.
No, it was done in the old art style of the X-Men cartoon. But basically people are like, oh, it's going to be woke, it's going to be progressive, it's going to have all these things in it, and it's going to be trash. And the few people who watched is like, it was actually okay. Like, it felt like the cartoons. Like, there was a few things in it that weren't great. And I actually would recommend watching this, but I'm not going to, because everyone's like, no, this is just going to be trash. And that is what you deserve, because it's not amazing.
You know what I think part of this is, though, really? Like, that is a shame in a way, right? But on the other hand, when people say it's okay or it's pretty decent, like, they're like, oh, you got, like The Witcher or House of the Dragon is decent. It's like, those things are, like, they are just outside the garbage rating, right? Like,
that's, Drinker has expressed this. He's like, I've realized over time when I came back from a movie and watched, like, this was really good, I recommend it. After watching it again and thinking about it and watching it over older films, it's like, no, everything else was just so bad. Like, this was just okay. And compared to everything else, it was good. But it's just okay.
But you see, that's how I feel about, like, all TV and anime, always. Like, it's not just in comparison to the modern film. It's like, it's always been terrible. Yeah. And people, eventually they get burned out to get to my level of enlightenment. But okay, so this actually ties in back to the AI thing, of course. So all this AAA stuff, it was where everyone got together. But now if you keep buying into AAA, you're just kind of becoming apathetic or angry. And you're so AI or indie is the smartest choice, right? It's like, okay, you got to play indie games because they're all great. But the thing, so everyone plays indie games now.
Now they're all gay furries.
Well, because like Wild Frost is amazing, Rivals of Aether is amazing, Lovers of Aether is amazing. Dungeons of Aether is amazing. All the furry games. but people play all these...
it wasn't a diss against gays or furries. It's just, for some reason, a lot of indie games have gay furries.
Terraria. Terraria is one of the most played games on Steam, still. After, 14 years.
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley. These games, they're huge. Hollow Knight. There's these huge indie games. But not everyone plays them, right? Everyone finds their own indie game.
Yeah.
It's not, everyone's playing Mario, everyone's playing Uncharted. No, it's like, you're playing Hollow Knight, I'm playing Shovel Knight, you're playing Slay the Spire, everyone's playing their own indie game. Because indie games are amazing, they're fixing the market. But there's so many of them that I can't talk to someone, like, if I go to you and I say, okay, I beat Pseudo Regalia a few months ago. Amazing game. You're like, what's a Pseudo Regalia?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, it's about this thick goat, right? Like, thick with 2 C's goat. When these skimpy, server uniforms. And she bounces around on this giant, pogo stick sword. And...
So can we talk about Dead Cells instead? But you're nowhere near as far in Dead Cells as me, and that's the other problem.
Right. But what I'm getting at with Pseudo Regalia is it's this amazing game. It's a 3D platformer.
Yeah.
It's an amazing game, but you haven't played it. And then you're like, okay, I just played, some game I've never... Like Baldur's Gate 3, this little indie game that I've never played, right?
Yeah.
And so you're... But there's no connection there. I think there's also a dynamic of, because it's not the big AAA releases, I think.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is a bad example.
Because everyone just buys the game on Steam when they can afford it, when it's on sale or when they want it, when their backlog is at whatever place. It also means that, everyone that's going to play Elden Ring has played Elden Ring. I haven't played it yet because I don't have anything that can run it. But that means when I play Elden Ring, I can't talk to you about playing Elden Ring because everything would be a spoiler, right? Yeah. Whereas if we both buy that AAA game because it's the one game of the year, then we're playing Elden Ring together. It's like, have you been to this zone yet? Have you seen this? Oh, I saw it was great. Then we're playing it together in a way, right? So I think that's going to go away with AI.
So here's my thoughts on that. Is
even more than it has already.
Yeah. So Dan Dubs, he's an economist.
Yeah.
He's an Austrian economist. He's not from Austria, but he's the school of Austrian economy.
Right.
Which is a much rarer school. And so he talks about this book. Can't remember the name of the book at all. But basically, it's in relation to Bitcoin, which is... So we go through these periods of cycles where something centralizes power and it swings back and forth.
Am I making Marx's argument on stratification of society?
Not exactly.
I think I'm coming close.
Anyway, so there's a pendulum in society. Could call it pendulism because it's a condition that affects society. Where governments get a lot of power, and then something happens that destroys the power, and the power swings away, and then the governments get power again, and then something happens, the power breaks, and it swings away, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So currently, government has a ridiculous amount of power because they control banks.
Yeah.
Which they should never have done. But they do. And there's a ridiculous high amount of tax, and they own the fiat currency. So it's not gold, it's the Canadian dollars, the American dollars, the pound.
Technically in the States, the bank and the state are separate.
Yeah.
But they're very intertwined. But they are separate. In Canada, they are one.
But even then, it's the American dollar. It's not gold. It's no longer gold backed.
Yeah.
It's based off oil, petrodollar.
Well, I think it's actually based off of their military.
Well, the petrodollar is based off the military.
They're basically saying, use our money or we'll invade you.
Yes, that is what the petrodollar is.
No, well, the petrodollar is not a mainstream idea. There's, people have observed that every time, this happens in Africa a lot, every time a African leader decides to use their own currency instead of the American currency, they get deposed shortly after. But it's not actually a policy that's...
Okay.
But yeah.
Anyway, so we can even ignore the petrodollar thing. But we can just go to, it's not gold.
Yeah, it's fiat currency. Yeah.
It's fiat currency. And so part of Bitcoin is actually getting rid of putting money back to people. Whatever. But basically, government has super centralized. However, two things are happening. One is people aren't liking that, and technology is allowing decentralization. And centralization's happening everywhere. Like we said, Disney Uber conglomerated.
Yeah.
And it's eating things. Microsoft is Uber conglomerated and eats video games. So when everyone gets their own personal AI that individualizes them again, and if Bitcoin, which I don't know if it'll be Bitcoin, but something similar, like more of a, we are just so fed up with using America buck. Yeah. We're going to use money that we consider having value instead of whatever you have.
Yeah. Roblox.
Yeah. That could be that, Roblox bucks.
Yeah.
So we do that. So we because currency is fiat, we could return to gold, but they control the gold, so we could make our own virtual fiat money. Whatever it may be. Basically, massive swing to decentralization and breaking government control. So when everyone has their own personal AI that's making their own video games or whatever. I think what will happen is there will be visionaries among the people who's like, the game that I had my AI make, it took me a lot of work to have it make it, and it's really good. Check it out. And then it's like, hey, did you play Joe Smith's Skyrim? Joe Smith's Skyrim is the best Skyrim there is. And you could try get your own, but his is amazing.
But I think like with Suno, you can see where if it's personal to you, it's so much better than like so even a good song.
It is, unless the song is truly art. Like, your song is personal to you, it's really good. But then there's like that one Vivaldi piece, or that one Green Day song, which is just the best song to you. Like, even though the song like has so much personal meaning, there's that one Green Day song.
Okay, but like let's take Super Mario World, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has Super Mario World. It's John's AI Super Mario World. It's the best in the world. But it comes to me and I'm like, this would be way better if all the Koopas were wearing ball caps. And then I'm like, oh, did you get to the part where Bowser's got this crazy ball cap? We're not having the same experience exactly there.
That could happen with the change of it. There might be...
Or like, Dark Souls is a better example, right? People on an easy mode for it. Dark Souls is actually, weirdly, the precursor to this whole AI thing. Because people have demanded for years Dark Souls adds an easy mode, right? But then that wouldn't be Dark Souls. It'd be a different game.
Yeah, you want to have the shared experience. So maybe...
You wouldn't have the shared experience.
Yes, yeah. Maybe what would happen is initially there is this everyone's having their own experience. Like, oh, I want to have the ball cap. It's sort of like modding games or whatever, but to the stream. So everyone's having their own thing. Maybe there will be a desire, like another pendulum swing, to have shared experiences. And so then people will go to John Smith's.
So the value will be simply like it already is with AAA games to an extent. It's popular because it's popular.
Yes.
Yeah. And it will be, the value will, so maybe people will knowingly realize the value of a centralized
mythos.
Yeah, basically. Like, okay, here's the other thing.
Because that's one of the things, like, people will even scoff at modders, like people scoffing at duck game modders. You're not playing, you've ruined the game. And sometimes it could be it's not the shared experience, other times like I prefer it in its pure form. It's...
You know what's crazy about modding, actually? This actually might be in your favor for your argument. Modding, to me and to you, I think, is kind of like everything about games, right? Like, it's, you go to all the modding sites, you download all the mods, you try all the mods, you play any game that has mods, you stick like 10 mods in it, right?
Yeah.
The percentage of people that mod games, even like Skyrim, which is desperately needs mods and benefits hugely from mods and has the best mods out there, is tiny.
Second best.
Skyrim has the second best mods?
Yeah.
Compared to like XCOM? Or...
Minecraft.
Oh, Minecraft, yeah. Yeah, but even people that mod Minecraft, like you think, okay, Minecraft is just a game that you mod, right?
Yeah.
But even that's tiny. Like the amount of people that mod Minecraft, I have seen people play Minecraft on an Xbox. Like there are people that play it with a controller on the console.
I've seen people play it with a phone.
Like, what are you playing? What are you doing? What is this? What is this experience?
Yeah.
I've seen people. This is getting off tangent, but I've got like this chest full of diamonds. Like, who cares if you have a chest full of diamonds? They're virtual. They don't mean anything. I can go into cheat mode and make a chest full of diamonds. It's like, yeah, but I wasted 40 hours of my life. Oh, good for you.
I can waste 2 hours installing mods to make this giant thing dig holes in the ground. That'll get me that chest full of diamonds. Then I can spend another 5 minutes installing equivalent exchange, and I can turn dirt into diamonds.
But my point is actually that it's about the overall experience rather than just having numbers go up, right? But like on
no. Let's go back to the numbers going up. I like numbers going up.
See, I'm not really a fan of it actually. Matthew Matosis, have I talked about this before? He made a video where he said, you see a lot of games that have meta progression now. No. Like, oh, you lose, and now, okay, you can now get your pickaxe swings twice as fast in Minecraft or something, right?
No, I quite literally like numbers going up. In high school, I would entertain myself where I'd take my calculator and I'd go 1 plus 1
people
plus
do.
1 plus 1.
Lots of people do. Most people do. But so Matthew Matosis did a video about this where he said, like, you'll get a 2% increase on your pickaxe, right? And he said take any game out there, and it can be improved by adding a meta progress numbers go up system into it. And the problem with that is that means that all games will eventually go that way if they want to be competitive.
Has timber. No, it has timber hearth in it.
Oh, Outer Wilds?
Outer Wilds.
Okay, but imagine if okay, I don't want to, without saying anything about the game or spoilers, right? Imagine if you get more time, power, money, those stats, right? Whatever, you get like 2% every time
I don't think it's needed.
you complete this task or unlock this achievement. Right, but it's not needed. That was Matthew Matos's point. Yeah. It's not needed. But people will say,
I think it makes it worse. I think it actually make it worse. It wouldn't add progression at all to it.
Well, Matthew Matos thinks it makes it worse too. But will people want to play the game with a sense of progression where the numbers go up, where they feel like they're earning something? Or will they want to play the game where, Outer Wilds especially, where I will say this about it, there is no sense of meta progression whatsoever, right? So when you take that aspect, and people are like, well, I want the game that makes me feel like I've done something with my life, that I've progressed, that the number go up. And now he could be wrong, and I think he is wrong actually, because I think there will always be people that are against it.
Yeah.
But
well, even on that progression, like the sheer amount of numbers going up, like numbers going up, sheerly for the progressive sake of Divinity 1 versus Divinity 2, like you can be level 2 and you can beat level 5 monsters. It doesn't work in Divinity 2.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't be level 3 and beat level 4 monsters in 2.
Yeah, and it's because the numbers get too bloatedly high. And even the same thing in The Witcher, like that's so dumb. And like, what is the point of those numbers going up with that? Like, my sword's higher level.
But that's where he was pointing out was games like The Witcher add in level scaling.
Yeah, so with Assassin's Creed, this is interesting, Assassin's Creed
fell for it as well.
Yeah, well, they've moved away from it now, apparently. But, like, Assassin's Creed, like, the only thing you could really say is, alright, so this enemy takes 3 hits. This enemy takes 1 hit. But the enemy that takes 3 hits is bigger and slower. And, like, those would be the stats, like, oh, this item can one-shot any enemy in the game. But that's the item's thing. It's not the item does plus 200 damage. It's one-shots. The amount of hits isn't a number. It's not HP. It's actual mechanic of the game. And then if you start going into those number things, you kind of ruin Assassin's Creed.
So you talked about like 75% of people about modding. They're like, what's a mod? And then you talk to 20%, the remaining 20% of it, and they're like, that sounds like a lot of work, I don't care. And then you talk to the remaining like 10%, and of those like 5% will say like, well, no, modding makes it worse, I don't mod. And then you've got like this 5% that are like, well, maybe, but I don't like the mods you use, I'll use my own mods, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to convince someone to mod their game to improve it. Even it's hard to convince someone that mods games to mod their game to improve it, right? Like, it's very hard to say. Like, imagine you go to someone, you're like, my AI took Assassin's Creed Origins and made it so you can one-shot everyone, right? So it's basically Assassin's Creed Origins, but it got rid of all the horrible RPG elements, right? Just tore them out. Nobody's going to play your version of that game. They're going to play because it's not because they don't think your version of the game's good even. It's just, they're like, no, this is easy. This is what I have right here. I'm going to play the version with the progression scaling because that's the game I was given. Right, or that's the game that I had.
Well, maybe the AI will make it ridiculously easy, though, for them to do.
Modding isn't hard. And people still go like, well, I don't want to do it because this is how... I have seen people get angry at me for telling other people, don't play Star Wars Battlefront because it's full of microtransactions. Like, well, how would you know? You've never bought it. Like, because I can read, I can look, I can see, I can read the most downvoted... comment on Reddit, the sense of progression and accomplishment, pride and accomplishment. It's right there. The company themselves was saying, yeah, we want you to spend 40 hours to unlock
the most
Darth Vader.
Downvoted video I have is about microtransactions.
Yeah, people defend these things. Mm-hmm. They defend the big corporations. I don't know if you've seen the image.
No, my multi-million-dollar company.
I don't know if you've seen the image. It's like this fat guy with a katana, and he's like, how dare you, I shall defend the honor of this multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, it's the other, like, no, my multi-billion-dollar guy jumping in the way.
Yeah. So I think you're not going to be able to go to most people and be like, check out my new... Right, so, like, let's say you've got your Suno song, and I've got my Suno song. I'm like, okay, check out the Suno song I've been working on. You're like, I'd rather listen to my Suno song, right? Mm. And so I think that's part of with the AI stratification as well. It's going to be like, why would I listen to your song? I don't want to listen to your song. It's like, we have this idea, everyone's going to be playing Bob Jenkins' Mario. But it's like, maybe nobody will want to try. Like, do I want to try playing Bob Jenkins' Mario? Now, what I've noticed...
We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, what I've noticed is I tend to be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I tend to be pretty good at predicting future trends. Like the meta Reddit idea and what AI would become, and that AI could just take over your entire operating system and become an image generator. I tend to be pretty good at it, I think. And I saw a video where the guy said, if you think you're good at predicting the future, then you should invest in stock, because if you're so good, put your money on the line, you know? So the question is, how do you make money off of the idea that people will become stratified? Like, where do you put your money down now that it can pay off in the future? Do I start investing in like group therapy, because that's going to be huge once people realize that they don't see people anymore because they're all listening to their own songs? Do I invest in music sharing because everyone's going to realize I need more connection? Or social media? Here's the horror future. Social media becomes bigger because people are like, I'm so isolated by my AI. I now need to have this false sense of connection even more.
You develop mass marketing that will get people to get together without AI, and you use AI to get them.
So you invest in like anti-AI social market media type platforms.
That uses AI to do it.
Yeah. Well,
so there's this ad that I've seen on X, which is how you met your girlfriend, and then it's this online dating, and has a scratch through it. It's like, and then underneath is had 4 interesting dinners in one night with complete strangers, and it's basically this app advertising. You sign up to it, and it will just select from a pool of 4 other people, and then you just basically round robin, sort of like what are those called? The
speed dating type things.
Speed dating, but there are actual parties as well where you just basically go and do that. I can't remember what they're called, but yeah. But it's organized through an app.
I think it's Sports Check has been doing ads where it shows a person working out and their phone rings or they get a text and they just like chuck their phone to the side or something and they keep working out.
Yeah.
And when I see those, I'm like, nature is healing, because the soulless corporate money grubbers who always try to prey on the most vulnerable emotions of people are saying, people seem to react well to
there's
hating on
Apple iPad ad.
Oh yeah, where it just destroys everything. And then people got upset about it.
And then a different company had the ad where it's this music sheet and this girl's playing guitar, and it was a tool and it's helping her to play guitar. And they,
well, you know what's interesting?
Suck it, Apple is basically what Samsung did.
A lot of people were defending Apple as well, and they were saying, "Look, you're just too stupid. You don't understand the ad. It's not saying it replaces them. It's saying you can do all those things in one spot." And it's like, yeah, everyone understood that. The point was they didn't like the feeling of this thing being replaced, right?
Yeah.
But Samsung, a few years before that, made a very similar ad, almost identical, and people were quite happy about it. And I think that could represent maybe they just got the tone a bit better, right? But it could also be the timing.
Yes.
People didn't feel like everything was being replaced back then, so they're like, oh yeah, technology is fun, technology is cool. But then, like I said, with the phones, everything in one seemed like a good idea. Turned out not to be. With the AI, it could be the same. People realized, I don't want everything in one place. I have an MP3 player, and it's amazing because I can keep it beside my bed. You can't keep a phone beside your bed, but I can keep an MP3 player beside my bed. If I wanted to listen to music, I plug in some headphones and listen to it. It's amazing. I can take it on walks with me. It's great because it's not a phone where someone will text me while I'm on a walk in the middle of nowhere. It's like this thing is safe from the world. It just has music, and that's it. And it's actually, I think it's better that way. And I think, the advertisements, what people get wrong, show the will of the people, and what they get right show the will of the people too, because these corporations, they're all soulless entities just trying to mimic real human emotion, but what they're trying to mimic says something about where humans are at, because they do all these focus groups to figure out where people are. The people defending the Apple ad, midwits. It's like,
well, even the people defending the
I've been growing in hatred towards this group of rationalist midwits where they have above average IQ, like most of them, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it has led them into the most arrogant position of like, you can understand and break down anything, and if people don't agree with you, that means they don't understand me, because obviously I am.
That's quite literally midwittery.
It's like, if you don't agree with me, you just simply didn't understand me. It's like, no, I understood you and you were wrong. And I've just been getting more and more pissed off with like all these like anti-spiritualist, rationalist
pseudo-intellectuals.
Yeah, that are like, I'm reading this book recently, right, where there's this demon chained to a desk, and the main character can't figure out why he's chained there, and the demon's not allowed to say why he's chained there. And so he's trying to figure out, okay, so the demon doesn't eat any like animal products I give him, but he will eat the vegetable products, but he'll also eat flies out of the air.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, but I'm not allowed to ask him about what he can eat or not eat. So it's like, what are his rules for eating? Because then he tells me, oh, I'm not a vegan. He's like, what? Okay, so you're not a vegan, but you won't eat any animal products that I bring you. So what's going on? And why was he chained here? Is it dangerous for me to give? Maybe if I give him the right kind of food, it'll free him, and that's terrible. But why would the people that chained him here make it possible to free him with just idiot humans walking by, right? Like, why would the angels that chained him here allow that to happen? So maybe it's just something like the food he eats is so horrible he's not allowed to talk about it. Like maybe he wants to eat babies or something. But then he's thinking, no, demons wouldn't have access to babies in hell, so it can't be. But reading that, it's like, no, you just completely skipped that. How do you know this demon never had access to babies? Just because you think he didn't have access to babies doesn't... Or maybe he can only eat the children of entities. It doesn't have to be humans. Maybe he never had access to humans, but there's a lot of different creatures in the universe. It didn't...
Or maybe...
it's like, you just...
or maybe the way that the demon isn't even applicable to scientific reasonable logic of this is a demon made by Satan and it wants to eat babies. Even if it never had access to them, it was made by Satan, and Satan's creations eat babies.
Yeah, exactly. But what happened... So the first lesson in any philosophy class, right, is logic. And when they teach you logic, they give you an example, something along the lines of, okay, swans aren't red. John isn't red. Therefore, John is a swan. It's like, this is an incorrect assumption. And that is like one of the most basic faults in logic, right?
Isn't that behold a man? That's...
that Diogenes did.
Yeah,
it's very similar to that idea, yeah. And that is like... But for some reason, people think, oh, I'm so logical because A plus B equals C, therefore C equals D. And that's not how logic works, and that's one of the first lessons in logic. But you think, oh, I figured it out. Now, this is just a character in a book, right?
Yeah.
And the author... Most authors aren't actually this smart, and so I tend to not trust authors. But sometimes authors are actually smart enough that they make their character make mistakes that they themselves don't make, right?
Yeah.
And when they can do that, they're a great author. It's great authors that can do that. But I thought it was the perfect exemplification of people thinking they're being logical when all they're doing is being rational, and it's weakly rational at that.
Yeah.
Like, that was a very weak rationality. And, yeah, it's been... the Heroes of Might and Magic 3 forums have died recently.
Oh.
The Heroes community. It's gone. And so people were talking about it on Reddit, so I made a Reddit account to try to figure out what was going on. And did
Ghost and Jolly Joker go nuclear to each other?
No, what probably happened was Valerie, who owns the website, he hasn't interacted with it in like 10 years. He basically just pays for it and that's it. And so it probably just died and he didn't notice. And so people just need to get a hold of him. That's probably what's going on.
Yeah.
Or maybe he died. Like, because, you know, this is like a 24-year-old website,
yeah.
right? Like, there's things that are going... But, and he kind of lost interest, but he was willing to keep it up because it's this huge resource, doesn't cost him much. He gets donations, he has ads, that sort of thing. And he seems like a decent guy, I guess, based on that alone. I don't know anything about him, but...
At base level, I give charity to Heroes players. Yeah,
they seem a saner group. But so on Reddit now to talk about Heroes. So Heroes community, I love the forum so much, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on Reddit talking to a few of the people from there. Like I made a temp account and I'm like, because there's a Heroes 3 forum. So we're talking in there, and Fire Paladin, who's one of the top modders, he was saying, so I'm going to try to contact Valerie. We're going to use Acid Cave for now. We might also use Celestial Heavens or the DF2 Russian forum.
Yeah, I was thinking, there is a lot... I've been on some of the Russian forums. I haven't even been on the main forums. There are so many of them. Good luck.
Well, Acid Cave, I think, is Polish, which is even worse in some ways.
Yeah, no, but like the Eastern European...
Yeah. Well, have you been to the Chinese forums? Like, it's a different language. I mean...
Obviously. I have been to them. I accidentally downloaded a virus.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. But like, the Chinese forums, they're also, like... Chinese doesn't translate into English at all. It's
no.
Like, Russian translated into English, fine. But Chinese, it's like... The flowers on the lily pad look shining in the moonlight. It's like, what? Oh, I was saying hello, how are you? It's like, oh, okay. But, so Fire Paladin said, yeah, we seem to have lost everything for now.
Yeah.
And someone replied, well, have you gone to archive.org? Because they have it there. Archive.org has it. And so it's like, it's got most of the stuff, so that's great as a backup, but most of the links are broken. And the guy said, well, no, they're not. And yes, they are. Well, can you give me an example? Yeah, I clicked on a link and it said this doesn't go to anywhere. Which link did you click on? He's like, why don't you believe me? I went to the website and I clicked on the link and it didn't work. Now, sure, some of them work, but some of them don't. And the guy's like, well, why are you being so... So that's what Fire Paladin... He's like, why don't you believe me? I clicked on the link, it didn't work. I told you it didn't work. And what else do you need? And so the guy replied, why are you being so hostile and aggressive to me? And
So what you're saying is the poor heroes community
Is
members
suddenly exposed to Reddit.
are getting exposed to Reddit, and these are innocent forum users
Yeah.
who have a sense of humor and a sense of trust and have humanity still, and
Yeah.
they're getting exposed to Reddit.
And all the heroes community people trust each other. Like if they say I do this, they're like, oh yeah.
Well, actually, this is Ghost and Jolly Joker's sort of arguments. Ghost would be gone off Reddit.
Yeah.
Like,
and Jolly Joker is like an SJW, but he's like
but he's
a good one.
He talks to Ghost.
Yeah, he never leaves. He never
Yeah.
backs down. Like he's the kind of person I wish all SJWs were. He's awesome. And like, you know, he's actually an Age of Wonders player as well. And I've had great interactions with him. He seems like a really cool guy. It's just he's got a little TDS, but hey, who doesn't? You know, it's fine. I could be influenced in the other direction, right?
Yeah, and
But
that's one of the things. Like one of the few reasons I go there is it is so funny to read the people's interactions, and they just have the most weird interactions that it's like, okay, and then they're done with them.
now I do believe Gandalf was actually banned from Heroes community for eventually taking off the mods enough. But what's funny is his avatar was the red Archmagi from Heroes 2.
Yeah.
The red, and when he got banned, he made a new account with the white.
He's just waiting for that, wasn't he? He's just waiting. That's the whole reason he did that.
He's like, I gotta go.
Need to push it just enough so I can do this visual gag.
Yeah. But and the guy also who had replied to Fire Paladin did say, I've never heard of your website, but have you checked archive.org? So it's like he's not a Heroes community guy at all, right?
Yeah.
And so I replied to Fire Paladin, was like, don't worry, you're sane. It's just the nice thing is that Fire Paladin, he's got way more upvotes on it. But that's the thing. A lot of these books I've been reading, books written by Zoomers and younger millennials, I think is what's doing this. But I've been seeing it more and more, and it's kind of grossing me out. It's online interactions, like texting each other and chat forums and stuff, are becoming elements in books, like in urban fantasy and stuff too. It's like it'll show like a text message conversation, and they're quite well done, most of them. But they're like real text conversations, and it's actually enough that it's like, wow, text conversations I hate. It's revolting. And you know how like Dresden Files, it takes place in about 2015, the later books, right? Yeah. There's a reason why Harry destroys all technology around him. It's not actually just an interesting plot point. It's so that you don't have to deal with cell phones and texting and email. Because for Private Eye, he'd be doing a lot of, like, Private Eyes typically would be doing a ton of email and texting and whatnot. And it's because it isn't, people have talked about this. Star Trek doesn't have any social media, right? Yeah. Whenever we show the future, there's no social media. It's because we don't actually want it. When we create our perfect worlds in media, it's not there.
Yeah.
But when I see it in the stories more and more, it does make you think.
So that urban fantasy I tried to write like the beginning of, and the main character is like making a YouTube video that a police commissioner is clicking on. My thoughts of that is it's like 2005 sort of YouTube. So it's like the most
2007 probably.
Sorry, yeah, 2007. But it's like maybe like it's the very early, like it's just some guy's backyard making these videos, and so that's why guys like he has really good special effects. Yeah, and that's the sort of setting. And even if
you dang Zoomers and
if I continue with this story though, like my technology is probably going to have a weird mix of it will be partly modern, but certain aspects will be stuck in the early 2000s.
Well, yeah, I think that's what's happening. Is the reason why I haven't seen this until now is because it's not it's only once stories are being now written by people who are born in like 2007 and whatnot are actually starting to write them, which is crazy to think about, that people born in 2007 would be writing stories, but yeah, they could be. Yeah. But I think I've decided to go full Juvenoia. You know, like I hate Zoomers. They're all like, you know, I never liked it when millennials were lumped into a single group. It's like people aren't just lumped into a generation. But you know, those young people, I don't understand their music. I don't understand their slang. I don't understand why they like it. I don't like the way they dress.
You don't get.
They all look like women.
You don't have the riz that's needed.
They all feel sick. They all dress like women. Their hair's done up like broccoli.
You don't gyot it. I don't even know if I'm using these words right.
They you know, they have like the broccoli haircuts, and they have their handbags and their.
Actually, so this is something on that. So there was this animation. What was it? Yeah, it's an animation where there's this old man in this medical bed, and there's a nurse there, and his grandson's there. He's dying, and he's basically like full brain rot Zoomer speaking, like he's got like skivvy get like that whole thing, and it's unintelligible basically. That's not true. And when I say that won't happen, and that's not true, is so my cohort at high school had these terms and slangs and things we used. I can't even remember them anymore, but they were weird and strange, and like it wasn't just like all youth of my age throughout North America used these terms, and we had some unique ones to ourselves being in the high school we were in, but they disappear, and that generation picks up other ones that they use, and maybe some like maybe Riz will carry over and be charisma. But a lot of it just sloughs away and gets replaced with other ones, and the young kids always have their weird terms. But
a lot of slang does stick around, though. Like
it sticks around.
Like cool. Mm-hmm. Like wizard died out, but cool stayed around.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying is a lot of it disappears, some of it stays, but they're not... You pick up new ones even as you get older. There's different words and different sayings. So they won't be Gatine and Gizlerine and Yeetine and Rizzing.
Actually, XKCD did a comic on this where he pointed out that when we do old time speak, right, we say, the art, whatever, and thou shalt... We are completely blending together the medieval ages.
Yeah.
Right? Which was like 1,000-year period or more. So we're actually taking slang from one period that would have never been used in another period. Yeah. So he pointed out a play like 100 or 200 or 4,000 years in the future. They'd be like, me sooks, forsooth, do you grok me hearties about that guy's riz over there? Like,
yeah,
it's the same thing, doing something like that, combining all the weird different layers of time.
Like they might have just said ye, and that's...
Yeah. We should bring wizard. We should bring wizard back. Like, wizard!
I still say it sometimes.
And bring back gay.
It is actually coming back.
Yeah, and I think it's lost... Well, I don't know if it was... Where I grew up, it was never really meant to be cruel, I don't think. Yeah. It was always sort of strange. It was a strange one.
Yeah, well, I think of words to be verboten is quite the shame to be a verboten word, because it did a very good job of describing what people were calling it.
But that said, well, I think lame could also work. But I think that said...
It's slightly different.
If you know, well, I guess crack-a-lackin' for a while was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And that means there are no white people here, right? Like, cracker-lacking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so in like Madagascar, when that zebra's like, this place is crack-a-lackin'.
Huh.
So it's actually...
well, yeah, git.
Git?
Yeah, that person's a git.
Right.
It's quite rude.
Git is?
Yeah.
Oh.
It comes from beget, or begotten. It's basically like all the others.
So like a bastard, basically?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Basically, every single one that you're uncertain of means bastard or whoreson.
You know, did I tell you about bad?
No.
So the word bad, right, it is a womanish man.
So the word evil, right?
Yeah.
It comes from basically eels, right?
Yeah.
So eels have a lot of partners, and they slither together in a big pool. And so eel is evil, and so you don't know who your mother or father is because it's just like big slithery spawny.
I'm gonna press X to doubt on that one. But imagine 100 years from now, no, like 1,000 years from now, there's a play about like a sort of Shakespearean time play.
Yeah.
Where saying, "Come here, you egg! Thou have disrespected your mother," and then the child will be like, "Press X to doubt on that."
And the audience are just glassy-eyed, like, whoa.
I mean, Shakespeare's already like that. And a lot of slang we say now wasn't like eyeball. Mm-hmm. That was slang.
Yeah.
But Shakespeare popularized it to the point where it's just a word you say, eyeball.
You know what we should do? Is we should switch from English to English. And then our language would be so much simpler.
What's English?
So, English is English without French or German in it. So, they say dictionary. English is word book.
So we're basically just Germans.
So, menagerie is a French word, which is like a whole group of animals. A whole group of animals, lots of animals, would be the English version of menagerie.
We should switch to Saxon, and then all our words just turn into swears.
And, well, so it also gets rid of the Latin. Like, if you have a Latin word, you would just English it. So, like, what's a Latin word?
Colosseum.
Colosseum?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, how about, here's an easier one. Aquarium.
water tank.
Fishbowl.
Yeah, fishbowl. Yeah. Aquarium, fishbowl. Yeah. So that's what English would be.
Yeah. Arena.
Is arena
That's Latin, yeah. Latin for sand.
fighting place?
Stadia.
Fighting place.
Media.
Fighting place. Word place. Or word thing.
Vomit.
Gut food. Like, there is disadvantages to English.
Hippodrome.
Race.
Track.
Yeah, racetrack. But it can be fun to think of English.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of it's actually coming from Spanish and all sorts of other, like Saxon. I don't even know the difference between the Anglos and the Saxons, really.
Well, it started several thousand years ago. Isn't the Angles were the people there, and then the Saxons were with William the Conqueror?
That was the Normans.
Oh, the Normans.
The Normans added French.
Okay, so then it was. I think there was the Anglos there, and then the Saxons were early Vikings. I think they came over.
I think the Anglos were Vikings as well.
Yeah, well, the Anglos came over, then the Saxons came over, and they became the Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah. But I don't know what the difference between them is.
Just when they showed up.
Or maybe the Anglos, because like Boudica wasn't an Anglo, I don't think. I think she was a Celt.
Yeah, well, I think there was Celts and Anglos on the Isles, and they just came over at some point. Then the Saxons showed up later, and they mixed with the Anglos and got the Anglo-Saxons.
I've seen people saying, like, Britons had worse, right? And I was thinking, yeah, like the time that they had 12 of their 13 countries conquered by the Vikings. They've come back from impossible odds.
Yeah, well, Alfred the Great.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, that was him right there. That somehow turned that around. But I don't think...
Just out of some swamp ruin in the UK, this old man comes teetering out. It's like, dang it, I had thought my work was done.
Get out of my swamp.
He goes into Parliament and bakes some bread, and then he has to leave and it burns. And he comes back and gets sprayed by the woman.
What?
That's one of the legends of Alfred the Great.
Okay.
Is well, he was in disguise, and he sought shelter in this woman's house, and she is cooking bread on the stone in a fireplace, and she told the king, like, all right, I have to go do some business, and you're seeking shelter, but you have to work for it. So watch the bread and make sure it doesn't burn. And he's a king, and he's never cooked bread before, and so try as he might, the bread burns, and she comes back. And she berates him for burning the bed. And he's so sorry and apologizes. And he gives her a bunch of gold. And she's like, what the heck? And then he leaves. And then later he comes back when he's no longer disguised. And he thanks her for like giving him shelter during that night. And dealing with such an idiot fool. And he gives her more gold. And she's like, I had the king in my house and I berated him? But he was such a modest and kind man that he felt bad for burning the bread. So that's one of the legends of Alfred the Great.
That's a nice one. I like that. Nice, wholesome sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's good. Except that they're eating bread, the tool of the agricultural revolution.
Well, apparently, even the bread we eat is very different than medieval bread because it's quick rising yeast versus long.
And also, the grains today are much hardier, but that could also make them much hardier.
The longer rising yeast breaks down the gluten more. And makes it actually like something humans can tolerate.
So it's even more like pre-chewed food.
I don't know, but it's apparently like our quick rise doesn't actually make the bread digestible for us.
But you've heard that statistic, right? That Jared Diamond talked about how there's no cases of arthritis before the agricultural revolution in any of the fossil record. Now that could be that everyone who
died
or everyone who had arthritis fell in a volcano from their arthritis or something, right? Like,
yeah.
There's always...
their bones were easier to eat.
It's like, you were saying that about the microplastics, right?
Yeah.
How it could just be that they're using plastic needles to measure all the microplastics.
Yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of heuristics like that. Like, even there's no Bigfoot because there's no corpse of it.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the corpse? We have never found a great ape corpse. Ever.
Well, except human ones.
Yeah, but I mean, like, of, like the... Yeah, besides...
Gorillas and stuff.
Yeah, gorillas. Like, we've never found them.
Yeah, the entire fossil record of gorillas is like 6 teeth.
Or even something simpler to say than that is go into the woods.
Find a moose skeleton.
Find a corpse.
Yeah. I have found...
Because a lot of things have died.
I have found one deer carcass.
Yeah.
And it was almost completely eaten already.
It's disturbing.
I have found a moose skull buried under a rock, basically.
I found owl pellets.
Yeah, that'll give you a couple bones. And I have found some occasional vertebrae, but that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've found some like dead animals in the park, and why I find them is it's usually a dog kills a squirrel, and it quickly disappears.
Yeah, but like a moose, right? Huge creature.
Yeah.
You should be able to... The forest should be full of moose skeletons. They should be everywhere. Yeah. You should be able to at least find antlers.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can find antlers occasionally, but yeah, you're never going to find a full moose skeleton.
Even then, the antlers is probably because they got knocked off while they're alive, and...
Or, okay, an animal that would be about the size of Bigfoot, probably. A bear.
Yeah.
Where are all these bear skeletons? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Not finding those either. And then if you have an animal that actually buries its dead or hides it or eats it, then...
Well, elephant graveyards.
Yeah. But if Bigfoot's trying to, like, keep it hidden, then, yeah, you're never going to find it. Yeah, no, it's... But the rationalist comes along. And, nasty.
I've been going through the Bible, and I finally finished Songs. The only thing I remember from Songs is...
Songs. Yeah. Songs. Yeah.
Is praise God, God's the highest. Do not remember the name of God. Something in the desert. God is great. Hoorah, go God.
Yeah.
Songs is very boring.
He is my shield and my fortress.
Well, a lot of the songs come from Songs.
Yeah.
In verse 4. So, I'm on to Proverbs. One of the parts of Proverbs is good parents beat their children. And I was actually thinking about this even before Proverbs. I had this thought. I was walking from the grocery store, I think, to my car. And it was, would there be less of this cluster B snake speaking if instead of parents trying to psychologically dominate their children through tricks and words, instead just beat them?
Probably. But I would suspect there might be another thing that would replace it. Like I think...
Well, it's even like, just, I was listening to two people have a conversation, and the way they interacted was very much both of them were talking to each other as if they were talking to children. And it's like, did they not develop past that? Is that the only way they know how to talk? Is that what talking is to them? This sort of weird weaving of words that are layered with this sickening honey to try to communicate.
Where you talk about an idea, right here. Unfortunately, the printer failed, but it's all about coming up with statements to agree with instead of having a conversation.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We gotta beat each other now.
But even more than that, it's hard to think of examples in the moment, but just like a kid doesn't want to do something, and so
you say, but you need to, okay, so they don't want to brush their teeth, right? But then you say, strong children brush their teeth because it prevents their teeth from falling out, and that's good. And
it'll make me happy if you brush my teeth, if you brush your teeth.
Yeah, instead of, do it! Whack!
Basically.
You do it, you've had until 3. 1, 2, okay, good, you're brushing. Good. Yeah, I think the reason that we have all this...
we need to get rid of Child Protective Services.
Well, that's probably part of it, actually. Because they're a great idea, and they do a lot of good, but they're also this terrifying weapon.
Yeah. But
I think rather than get rid of him, improve him as much as possible, probably. But it does feel... It feels... So the Metal Slug... This seems like a bit of a tangent, but it's not, I promise. The Metal Slug franchise, they used to have all those awesome arcade games. They've released a tactics game recently. And to take cover in it, you move your unit to stand beside a block on the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like XCOM, right? But the thing is, you get 2 defense, no matter where you and the enemy are relative to the cover, as long as you're next to the cover.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly elegant rule, right? It's like you just stand by the cover, you get 2 cover points. It doesn't matter if there's no line of sight calculations. It's just that. I think that's amazingly elegant. It's like there's this instinct within, I think, a lot of game designers just slash it down to the most simple thing possible, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same sort of tear out the Child Protective Services. Just get rid of it. Just don't worry about explaining stuff to your children. Just whack them. But I think there's a reason we tend to do a lot of line of sight calculations and whatnot. It's because some of that granularity does add something to the experience, I think.
I I do think about like that child just talking that like adults speaking like children or adults speaking the way they would speak to children in a sort of I am smarter than you so I will intellectually dominate you.
I think a lot of that fear arose from children being beaten as well, to some degree.
Yeah.
But look, I'm not against beating children here. I'm exploring that. Like, I want to lay some foundational things here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against beating children. I'm just exploring the idea here. Right.
Well, so in Proverbs, I can't remember the lines exactly, but it actually talks about like the loving parent will beat their child basically when the kid deserves it.
Yes, but that's important. It deserves it.
Not any other time. But they also, a good parent needs to like know when they deserve it, and it talks about how you know. I can't remember, but if you're going with beating children's the way to go about it, like Proverbs actually has some pretty solid foundations to start with.
Yeah, and that is very important. Never in anger, right? We've talked about this before. You can't beat your children in anger at all. That's off the table entirely.
Yeah.
The moment you're doing it for any sort of release on your part, you've lost. You've failed there. And that again goes to random violence. Like if you're just striking them randomly or because you're angry or because you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Then yeah.
It's the same as verbally snapping at them.
Yeah. You're not helping them at all in that case. And I think that's probably what happened in the 50s and earlier was there was a lot of people shell-shocked, obviously, drunkards and that sort of thing. A lot of poverty as well. So
yeah.
That's something that I don't think about that often, but it was a huge period of poverty, like the 30s to the
silent
50s.
Generation was incredibly poor.
And
same with the greatest generation.
It's funny that, the boomers are the richest generation ever, and a lot of the advice and way they expect the world to be around them is predicated on the idea of everyone being as wealthy as they are. It's like, move out of the home at 18 and do this and this and this.
Well, that's what I was saying is the two generations before them was the greatest generation and the silent generation. And the greatest generation is kind of the reason we invented pensions is because old people were poor. And so it's a way to help old people.
The thing about pensions, when Hoover, I think it was in the States, created them. He said you get your pension at 65, right?
Yeah.
And you're set for life, basically. You're not rich, but you have money. The average lifespan at the time was 67 years. They expected to be paying them for 2 years. And now we have this bomb. We have this economic time bomb.
Economic demographic.
Because people have selfishly decided to live a lot longer.
Yeah.
And what's worse, not only have they decided to live a lot longer,
they had less kids.
Because
they're going to get a pension, so they didn't need to have kids to look after them because their pension could look after them.
I don't think so. That whole have kids to look after you, I don't believe in that.
Okay.
No. Because think about it. If the age of retirement is 65,
yeah,
and the average lifespan is 67,
yeah. Oh, it's just the concept of stopping working.
Retirement wasn't really a thing, right? Like, you didn't need to be looked after. When you were done, you were done.
Yeah.
Of course, averages don't tell the whole story. You had probably people dying at 40 and then people dying at 80. But I think, like in Japan, for instance, you tend to work until you die.
Yeah.
You don't need people to look after you. And there's people who don't have children who, they...
There's that video where it's a Japanese woman, and she says, this is the difference between a Chinese wife and a Japanese wife, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it's the Chinese wife will be very beautiful when you marry her. She'll look after you. She'll be lovely. And then once you're married a little bit, she'll just be every day on your ass, basically. And it's Japanese wife. She's wonderful. You marry her. She's still wonderful. She's a wonderful wife. You get sick. You get infirmed. You're in a wheelchair. She'll take the wheelchair out to the park, push you into the lake, and go, bye-bye, honey, I love you, as you drown. Should say the difference between the two.
There's probably some of that too. I've heard people still talk about the sentiment, I got my retirement plan waiting for me on the shelf by my door. It's a 12 gauge, and it doesn't have to be negative exactly. It's you look at that and you go, okay, I got to stay fit.
Yeah, well, part of that retirement plan as well, there's a different way of looking at it, it's that 12 gauge is when they come for me, I will fight back.
But you look at it and you go, okay, I'm gonna quit smoking because that's the other option, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop eating so much. That's the other option. I'm gonna whatever.
A part of it, I think, is so beating your children with love,
Yeah.
or using words with love. Maybe a little bit of A, a little bit of B. That it's not really should I do that or should I do this. It's beating them with hate or beating them with words with hate is what leads to the children beating their own children or them using the words with hate to their own children.
Or how about we talked about this in the same episode just recently. The idea that if you understand me, you would agree with me.
Yeah.
Right. So, because I have this theory that cluster B is partially defined as someone who can't deal with disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this sort of like, I'll have a tantrum until you understand me.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing with the child when you're talking, you're like, no, it's this, that you're trying to make them understand you because because you're right. I'll be like, you're right. So if you just have to talk to them until they give in and understand you.
Yeah.
And then, but if you do it or you're getting a smack upside the head, you're not concerning yourself with whether they understand you or not.
Yeah.
And therefore you have that feeling inside you, that sort of itching, like, but do they actually understand me, or are they just doing it because I told them to do it? And it's it doesn't actually matter. It's like you just want them to do the right behavior. There's no trust in your child.
Sargon I'm not going to explain it to them. I you do it because I'm dad.
Yeah. And now where Sargon fails, I think, is that is how you create a relationship where someone has complete, like he talks about how people have rights over each other and how people own each other, right? Like Sargon talks about that as a good thing. But when you have that world of people who aren't benevolent, like he appears to be, you suddenly are able to, that's where narcissism and psychopathy really shine.
You will never win.
I will. I'm losing ground in my own mind, but I'll fight back. But that's where, and cluster B even can take control, because if the parent, you have to do whatever the parent says, and there's no, and not only that, you have a right, like you were talking about, you have to look after your parent when they're older. Now the point of having a child is to have a slave. It's like, well, I need someone to look after me so I'm not lonely, and so when I'm sick, it's like, that's a slave, right? Someone that wants to look after you, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But even then, if you're like, I will create someone that wants to look after me, that's odd, maybe? I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. You could probably lean either way. But the Sargon world, I think, is very ripe for abuse. And what happened was a lot of people were abused by that sort of system. And so they jumped way in the other direction and tore the family structure to shreds. And they said, no more.
Yeah.
I don't want this anymore. And
anyways, beat your kids. Wait, no, is that the message? What's the conclusion here? Beat them with love?
Never in anger. And don't beat them. It's like what my psychology teacher talked about was, it's the shock. You don't want pain, you want shock.
Well, yeah, no, actually, that is the thing of... Jordan Peterson talked about that.
Like, you could have a spray bottle.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson talked about that. Like, he poked a kid in the chest, and it's enough to get a response of, like, an ack.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt. It's just... It's so they know.
Yeah.
It's like bopping your dog on the nose.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt the dog, but you've bopped it on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like a little spray bottle on your cat or something. You're like, hey, you're not trying to... And look, if they freak out disproportionately traumatized, maybe try a different method as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think every kid needs to be... I don't think every kid's going to respond the same to different things, right? Like...
No, all of them just... You tell them, go get my belt.
Like, I have a friend who his dad used to flick him on the forehead when he did something.
Yeah.
And this is something he remembers to this day with, like, kind of vitriol. Like, he hates it. Like, he thinks it's one of the things he hates most about his dad is this getting flicked in the head. Even though, it's not really going to hurt, but it was like... But I think part of the problem there was he was getting blamed for stuff he didn't do. And so it really made him resentful to the whole thing. Yeah. And it's like, how can you as a parent really know when you're correct either? Like, it's very... And so I think what you do in that sort of situation as a parent is you don't... I don't even think you can use the beating as a punishment. You have to use it as a what do you call that? A dissuasion type thing. Like, you have to say, so for example, hey, you've been picking on your sister, whack. Yeah. Don't do that. but instead you say, you stop picking on her or you're getting a smack.
Yeah.
That works, right?
Yes.
But in his case, it was, I hear you've been picking on your sister, whack.
Yeah.
It's like, that's because he was wrong most of the time. That's going to make you resentful. Even if you're right, it's like, well, how was I supposed to know I shouldn't pick on my sister?
So it comes back to my deontology.
So you tell the person in the moment,
Yeah.
you do X or I'll do Y. And then there's like maybe a 5-minute window, right?
Yeah.
Like after that period's passed, you can't expect the kid to know what the outcome of their action will be.
It's interesting that came back to my deontological argument for the only time it's okay to kill someone.
How so? Link it for me, because I'm stupid and slow.
Stopping someone from killing someone else in the act.
Right. Oh, rather than the idea of like, well, this person's probably a murderer, so I better go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally the only way to stop a murder is to commit one.
Right. So
that's the only time that murder deontologically is allowed.
So with the evil core machine, if you're sick and dying, because like if I was where I was 2 years ago right now, it'd be like, you got a 25% chance to live. I'd be like, send me through the machine. Like, right? And so now if it was everyone on Earth, you're given a 25% chance as well. That becomes a harder thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Even if you're in abject agony. But would you blame someone for, like, someone's just in the worst pain you can imagine, right? And they're like, they're someone else somewhere else, they jump through the machine.
Even if they're not in incredible pain, but someone else does it, I don't think I could blame someone from taking the choice of doing it. I'm still uncertain about myself, but if someone else did it, I don't think...
I think the problem with it is it strikes too much to me of like authoritarian, like if they're sick, it's a different story, but like authoritarian.
I'm choosing what's best for everyone.
Yeah, like I know what's best for you, and I will make the hard choice because it's like maybe I liked my sick life, maybe I didn't mind my arthritis, and I found ways around it, and it was worth it to me.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't want to be the person to be the authoritarian.
Yeah,
but if someone else does it, then you're a bastard. But I'm not going to hate you for it. I wouldn't know. Maybe if it like killed people I knew,
I wouldn't snap the Infinity Gauntlet. But you know, if Thanos, he's not the worst.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Also, it's even then like I'm thinking of reneging on that.
I think
it's weird. It's very weird.
I think the start of Infinity War did a good example of showing.
I think the problem is that this machine that kills 5% of the world is the One Ring. It actually is the One Ring. It is a very tempting choice, but you don't put on the One Ring. You don't claim it as your own. But, like, this is actually the reasonable lead into chaos. That's what Evil Corp's all about, these hypotheticals.
Yeah.
What's the first step I can get you to do, which will make you do evil?
Yeah.
That is literally like, you're a good person.
But it's like, okay, you've created a better world, but at the cost... Is it a better world because it was built... I think it's a fairly famous psychological idea of, would you have this perfect city if in order for it to run you had to torture a child for eternity, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the sort
of... Yeah,
it
falls under that same sort of rent. Like, where is it acceptable? Where will Evil Corp get you?
But I think if you're just thinking in pure terms of like, I want my suffering to end, I'm jumping through, then it kind of becomes a different story. It becomes selfish, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not... Do I prefer selfishness over the authority? I think the authoritarian, I know what's best for you, makes me more viscerally angry.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if I prefer it over selfishness or not. Because selfishness it's a more subtle, it's more like a disgust. Like,
well, so there's a kingdom that's starving, and there's a king who sees it, and he knows to survive, he has to like execute 20 citizens.
In that Heroes of Might and Magic Greek mythology thing I was playing, Calliope, the woman who Perseus rescues from being chained to the rock, it's like, it kind of narrates that, and it's like, Calliope's rescued and they're immediately married. The father wasn't invited to the wedding.
Yeah, so the kingdom's starving, and so the king has to execute 20 people to save them. So there's a Solid JJ video where Papa Smurf is talking with Smarty Smurf, and it's like, Smarty Smurf, you're a really clever guy. You do good work. You collect a lot of Smurf berries quite well, but unfortunately, clumsy Smurf dropped all the berries and set us back for the winter, and Vanity Smurf's just always looking in the mirror and she can't do it. And Lazy Smurf just doesn't do enough work. And I've been looking at, and we're just not going to have enough Smurf berries to make it through this winter. So you understand what we have to do, Smarty Smurf. We have to make the new Smurf's Master Race. Some of these are unwantable in society. Paul Smurf, have you been on those Smurf Anonymous again? They're right, but
yeah.
But still, that following there's a kingdom. 20 people are going to starve. The king has to execute, or I mean, they're all going to starve. The king has to execute 20 people.
Yeah, and then the rest of the kingdom survives.
Yeah, and it's different levels of that, and everyone's sick, and like with this evil corp machine. So Uber Black Death has infected the world.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to die. And you can do this. Everyone will be healthy. It'll get rid of the Black Death, but 5% die.
Well, that's why I did the 95% approval rate as well.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what if 95% of people say go for it? And you just don't have okay, what if everyone on Earth but one person says go for it?
Yeah. Well, there's that, but even the interesting of the people give you permission to do it. That's weird. Even if everyone said do it.
I've been reading this book about, well, if everyone said do it, I say go for it.
Really?
But if one person didn't, it gets a bit.
Then what you do if that one person doesn't is say, roll me a die. Are you feeling lucky, punk?
But I've been reading this book where, different book from the other one I mentioned, but this killer robot breaks free from a lab and it's trying to disguise itself as a human. And it's kind of like a comedy book, and it always, like, if it gets attacked by muggers, it kills the muggers, but it's purely based around survival, right?
Yeah.
And so it thinks having friends will help with survival because they give you free stuff, and they can give you knowledge that it doesn't have. So it has a bunch of friends, it has people it protects, and so it's basically this good guy that goes around defeating bad guys and maybe killing them in more brutal ways than a normal person would. But you're like, oh yeah, it's on the side of the good guys, basically. Yeah. But there's one scene where there's an exterminator in the sewers who is injured, and so the robot's friend says, oh, can you help him up to the surface, get him to a hospital? And the robot says, sure. The robot takes him up to the surface, and it's more convenient for the robot to just kill him. So the robot does.
Yeah.
And in that moment, my enjoyment of the book just instantly plummeted, because this guy was just as innocent. But you're like, of course, it makes the robot's completely logical by its own standard.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to do that. Like, there's no point. But it kind of soured the book for me. And I was thinking, okay, but this world, it's not impossible. There is superpowers in the world. It's not impossible that the exterminator somehow survives and will show up later. And I was like, does that matter? Yeah. I was thinking about that. It was kind of this weird question. It was like, does it matter? Oh, it turns out this exterminator actually does survive. Like, okay, so let's say everyone on Earth but one person is against it.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone is for it except for one person.
Yeah.
So you step through the portal. That one person survives, and 5% of the human population dies, but you survive, and the guy that was against it survives.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, the guy that was against it survives, so everything's okay. Is it?
Yeah.
And at some point, is there a point where you are following a moral code to the point of absurdity, and you have to recognize that your knowledge is incomplete and your moral code is incomplete, and you need to have the humility to cause a eugenic genocide?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, given the stuff like in Mein Kampf, it's like you could almost see that being the exact conundrum Hitler faced of like,
yeah.
I'm against genocide, but I have the humility to realize it might be necessary. And you're like, whoa, what kind of chain of logic was that? But you could work yourself into that, I think, fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Corp's dangerous. We got to keep him away from it.
Well, that's why they're not called Sunshine and Roses Corp.
Yeah, that's their sister company.
Well, they're perfectly honest. That's one of the things that they need to be. They're not trying to trick you. That, honestly, would be such a weird entity just to add to a story.
The devil?
Well, yeah, the devil, exactly.
Like the Glumgloser in Edge Chronicles. Yeah.
However, Evil Corp isn't even like this Glumgloser that's going to attack you or Satan. They just show up at points in the story, and they basically give you a Sisyphusian deal. Or a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
Or they give characters like a Faustian bargain, and they leave. And the character's not trying to fight Evil Corp. They're not trying to bring them down. But it's this evil that exists in the world.
It's like
has
evil Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, exactly. It has pressure on the world, but actually you can't do anything about it.
Name of the Wind has that. The tree.
Yeah.
The tree that every interaction makes the world worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has that entity. Lord Fowl's kind of like that, but he is the villain. Yeah. In Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the tree, I think, is very much like that.
Yeah, it's weird. So, it's undecided on beating children.
Well, I think it's beat your children when the rules are very clear.
Yeah.
In the moment only. You have to give them the warning first, and then you've got like a 10-minute cooldown.
And it's not like taking out the belt and lashing their backside for a minute.
Yeah, no, it's to stun. It's like, it's just a, whoa.
Yeah, it's to discombobulate so they can recombobulate. Yeah.
And it doesn't, the idea is more punishment than corporal punishment, I think.
Yeah.
And the thing is, but not a struggle session, because a struggle session is a torture that continues after the event has ended. It needs to end in the moment. Mm-hmm. That's why you also don't want to do something, I think...
Like grounding?
No, I think grounding could be fine, potentially.
Well, I think how you do grounding is... I'm
thinking, you don't give them, a rash with poison ivy or something.
Yeah, no, so how you do grounding is, if you're... This is how you use grounding. If your kid does something that's wrong, and you haven't told them that that's wrong, you don't ground them. But if you set up well-established rules, and you let them know what's okay and not okay, and they break those rules, then they get punished for breaking those rules, because they premeditated that punishment, that rule breaking, and so there is a consequence that isn't in the moment to stop them, it's the afterwards.
But when you tell them what is wrong,
yeah.
Right, you say don't go drinking with your friends, right? Yeah. That's it. You do not break their mind and get them to agree with you that, fine. Yeah, Mom, drinking with my friends is bad.
Yeah.
You don't go for that. You don't go for breaking their spirit. The struggle session of just admit that going with their friends is wrong. Admit that going with... You don't do it. And it's never that obvious, right? It's always like, look, I was scared. You're out with your friends. It's, I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't think that's good.
No.
It's like, oh, you scared me so much going drinking with other friends because, Jimmy down the road, he crashed and he died. And your mother was crying and then kid's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mom. Freaking you out with the...
About to punch you. Don't even act that way.
Well, it's gross, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's why I was making it. It's my natural response.
Yeah. Well, you have to tell me ahead of time, though. You got to say, look, you continue with the smack, and then you get the smack.
Yes, exactly.
But you got.
I get your point.
It's never obvious that you're doing it exactly in the moment, but I do think it's okay. So here, when I was working at the kids' camp,
yeah.
Did I do right or wrong? That's a question. Have I told you this? I think I've told you the story before. Kid grabbed onto this divider that was separating Jim in half, and he raised him up 20 feet in the air, and told him he was told to get down, and I was told to go punish him, basically. Take him out behind the building and shoot him, or whatever it was. And so I said to him, look, you get injured, this whole place gets shut down. The camp's over for everyone. That's kind of me saying, hey, agree with me, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, on the defense of that sort of struggle session in quotation marks thing, he went, oh, yeah, whoa.
Yeah.
But, of course, he's a kid. He's going to agree with me. I have the power over him. It's not like, I hate those things so much. My 5-year-old hates the climate change, or my 5-year-old saw Biden do this and said Biden's a stupid head. It's like...
Your 5-year-old couldn't care less. Give them cookies.
Leave your kid out of it. Don't give them sugar and wheat, you freak. But keep your kid out of this. Your kid doesn't have an opinion. Your kids can be manipulated to do anything.
Am I assuming that my cookies have sugar and wheat in them?
If you can't manipulate your kid to do anything, you're wrong. If you think you can't, you're wrong. And you're just an immature child yourself.
Yeah.
That's my main concern with those, would you go back in time to when you're 8 years old but you keep all your memories? It's that'd be great for so many reasons, but I would have no friends. Because I could control my friends, and that's not a friendship. It would be trivial to... I already could do that sort of thing to some extent. It would have just been even more. It's... Yeah. So yeah, in that case with that kid with the camp, what do you think? Is it the degree to which you do it? The fact that I gave him my spiel, and let's say he said, well, I was going to do it anyway. Then do I just stop there and say, all right, well, then you get, you can't come tomorrow or something? Do you just then... maybe explain once just so they know. Yeah. But you don't get them to...
You explain it, but you don't explain it with emotion. You give them hard facts.
And they don't have to agree with you.
Yeah.
They don't have to agree with you. They don't have to disagree with you. It's you explain it. Whatever they say next doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then you give them the punishment... Well, no. You give them the punishment if you said you're going to give... you say, get down there in 3 seconds or you get a smack.
Yeah.
And then they get down and you're like, okay, you don't. Right? But so when I take them out into the hall, I give them the talk. Yeah. Another thing I could have done is said, look, you're gonna get this place shut down if you do that. You do it again, you get a smack. Or I say, you do that again, you get a smack. Now, obviously, you can't be beating other people's kids as a camp counselor, but the equivalent, right?
Yeah, you do that again, we will kick you out of the camp.
You're not coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing I could have done. Except I didn't have any power because I was like an assistant counselor.
Yeah.
But that's sort of
there's certain levels as well. You're not his parents, you're a counselor. Like,
yeah. But I think the important part was that I wasn't hoping for a response from him.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe I was at the time. I don't remember now. But if I did it right, I shouldn't be hoping for the correct response from him. It should just be
explanation of the facts.
Yeah. Because you're a stupid kid. This is why what you did was wrong.
You mess around, you find out.
Yeah. You're a stupid kid. This is why what you did was wrong. You do it again. Maybe you wake up with a horse's head in your bed.
Yeah, mess around, you find out.
Maybe your car doesn't start tomorrow. Maybe, cars have a habit of exploding. Maybe yours explodes. Mechanics, they're hard to find now.
My family's got some Irish background.
Maybe we show you the old...
maybe you'll get a nice package in the mail that's ticking.
Maybe we show you the Shamrock's heat warmer, or seat warmer. The Shamrock... No, there's got to be a better one. We'll show you an Irish seat warmer. We give the old...
I don't know why I chose the Irish
instead of like the Italian mob or something.
I was just thinking like the Irish terrorism.
You know what's wild? The whole IRA thing, right? That was in the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
That was like a civil war in Ireland. Like a modern, progressive country that you just sort of think of as like nothing bad would ever happen here. And they had basically a civil war. I mean, we had the FLQ, but they were just this little terrorist group that killed a politician. That's horrible. But it's not like full out like madness that Ireland had. And that was recent. That could happen at any time, anywhere.
Yeah.
Like England could suddenly have the ERA or whatever.
Yeah.
Or the EKA.
That's why they think they need so much surveillance to watch you.
I was thinking...
Try to stop it.
There's all this like, oh, we got to vote for this person. Or no, you got to get this person in because the other person's evil. This person, right? Like the left versus right typically. But it could be anything, right? You have more parties. It's like, this person's evil, this person's evil. The problem of who gets in is only an issue if your government has a lot of power.
Yeah.
If you have a small government, it's like, oh, I don't like this guy's like road paving policy, but the other guy's road paving policy, like if they have no power, it doesn't really matter who gets in.
President James' wife is so ugly. Why does he have to be a president? Whenever he goes to talk to her country, she's there next to him, and it just makes me like, oh.
I mean, he can't do anything, but still, he's assaulting my eye.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with well, no, there's a lot of problems, but like with the sort of totalitarian fascism or communism, you have a bad leader, and it's like you basically you start becoming willing to kill people during the elections to get the right leader in, because if you get the wrong leader in, it's terrible. Like people get all freaked out about, oh, we're going to vote fascists into power like Hitler. It's like Hitler couldn't have done anything if the government wasn't that powerful in the first place. It's like, oh, like imagine if Hitler got to power in like I don't know, United Arab Emirates right now, let's say. I'm trying to think of a country that has basically no government, but he's just in power, and it's like, you can't do this, and the oil sheiks are like, yes we can. It's like, no you can't. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
We can hire Blackwater to do whatever we want.
There's a great case of it. It's kind of in the other direction of the king of Liechtenstein?
Oh, Lithuania. Not Lithuania. Yeah, you're right. Liechtenstein.
Yeah, Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we don't want a king anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Best of luck with that.
I'm taking my country with me.
Yeah.
Wait, you own this place? Yeah. Get it.
He owns like 90% of the country.
He has all their money. Yeah, that's the main thing. But yeah.
And he owns most of the property.
Yeah. It's like, you're getting evicted.
Just like, we don't want you as king anymore. Just takes a private property sign out of his jacket, sticks it in the ground, sits back on his chair.
Of course, that's how you get a revolution that ends with you dead.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they seem to be civilized about the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, beat your children with circumspection. What's the term? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my question is answered.
Yeah. Off to go beat. And it always comes down to the individual moment, right? But yeah, avoid struggle sessions wherever possible. Be clear wherever possible.
Set boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the main... Well, there's other problems with struggle sessions, but the needing someone else to conform to your worldview.
Yeah.
That is a complete boundary violation. But it's also a violation of just humility and subjectiveness, and it's like, nobody is correct, and so you need both sides to get somewhere to surround the truth. And
Yeah.
you can't surround the truth if everyone's aligned with you. Then the truth's always in front of you or behind you.
Yes. It's a sneaky bugger.
Yeah.
It might be have trouble getting its shoes on, but once they're on, you can't catch it.
All right. So wrap it up there then.
Yeah.
All right.